Darkness. A faint hum. The sound of breath, distant and echoing. Slowly, a light fades in, revealing a pair of eyes. They do not blink. They do not move. They only stare back. It's her. The Mona Lisa. Her face floats in the half-light, suspended between shadow and eternity. The smile, too faint to read, too alive to forget, plays on her lips like a secret whisper. Around her, the room is silent. Millions have stood before this painting, yet few realize how deeply it looks into them. The camera lingers. The narrator's voice softens. These eyes have watched the rise and fall of empires. They have stared through revolutions, through centuries of human wonder and violence. But what if they were never meant to be merely admired? What if they were meant to watch? The screen flickers between fragments, the faded texture of the paint, the cracks like veins spreading across her face. Each one a reminder. This is not just art. It's a coded message, encrypted in color and shadow. Leonardo da Vinci painted her around the year 1503, but 5 centuries later, she still refuses to give up her truth. Who was she? A Florentine merchant's wife, as the official record insists? Or something far more personal? Something Leonardo could never say aloud? Every brushstroke seems deliberate, almost mechanical, yet somehow alive. There is warmth, but also unease. The horizon behind her doesn't match. The left side sits higher than the right. The rivers flow in impossible directions. The background itself is a contradiction. A landscape that can't exist. Mountains and rivers that shift as the eye wanders. It is as if Leonardo painted a world that doesn't obey the same laws as ours. A dream or a memory. And the gaze that gaze follows. Always. From every angle, in every light, she watches. Modern scientists have scanned the painting, searching for clues hidden beneath the surface. Outlines of other faces, sketches of earlier versions. In one layer, a completely different woman seems to emerge. Her eyes wider, her smile colder. Why would Da Vinci bury one image beneath another? The narrator continues, low and deliberate. Perhaps he wasn't painting her. Perhaps he was painting himself. A pause. The camera zooms slowly toward the eyes again. Leonardo da Vinci was a man of impossible contradictions. An inventor of machines of war who despised killing. A devout believer who distrusted the church. A painter obsessed with perfection but haunted by decay. He sought to capture the divine, yet he lived as though God were silent. The music begins to swell, strings resonating like a question left unanswered. The documentary takes us through candlelit corridors of the Louvre, then through flickering sketches from Leonardo's notebooks. Flying machines, dissected bodies, angelic figures drawn with mathematical precision. His handwriting runs backward, mirrored, as if written for no one else to read. Hidden messages, secret diagrams, symbols of geometry, circles within circles, human forms aligned to cosmic proportions. Everything he touched seemed to be part of a greater code, a grand pattern he was chasing. Maybe the Mona Lisa was not meant to be a portrait, the narrator says, voice steady and grave. Maybe it was meant to be a key. The screen cuts to black. Then, suddenly, light bursts through. A vision of Florence at dawn, the bells of the Duomo ringing through the mist. Leonardo's world, a place of wonder, but also danger. The 15th century was an age of secrets wrapped in faith, where science was heresy and curiosity could be a death sentence. And Leonardo was curiosity incarnate. He studied everything. The flow of water, the flight of birds, the anatomy of corpses, the play of light through glass. He asked questions that no one dared to ask about creation, about God, about what it means to be alive. But in the Mona Lisa, something changed. For the first time, he wasn't just studying nature. He was confronting it. He was forcing the invisible, the human soul, to appear on canvas. Every feature of the painting is an act of rebellion. Her lack of jewelry defies the tradition of portraiture. Her clothing is plain, yet rendered with a precision that borders on obsession. The shadows around her lips, the famous sfumato, were created with hundreds of feather-light strokes, each thinner than a human hair. Leonardo built that smile the way an engineer builds a machine, with method, calculation, and patience bordering on madness. and still it feels alive. There's something uncomfortably intimate about the way she exists between light and dark. As if she's not posing, but remembering. As if the smile isn't for us, but for someone long gone. The narrator's tone lowers, almost to a whisper. Some say Leonardo hid codes in his paintings. Others claim he embedded secret messages, signs of forbidden philosophies, lost teachings, ancient wisdom reborn. But maybe the truth is simpler and far more unsettling. Maybe Leonardo's greatest secret wasn't written in symbols, but in emotion. A flicker of lightning across the screen. We glimpse his sketches again. Eyes, skulls, dissected muscles, the spirals of shells and galaxies. The same shapes repeating over and over in flesh and in stone, in art and in nature. To Leonardo, everything, from a heartbeat to the orbit of planets, was part of the same divine pattern. He believed creation itself was a mirror, reflecting the mind of God. But what happens when a man begins to see too much of that pattern? What happens when he starts to see it in himself? That is where the darkness begins. The Mona Lisa, then, is not a painting of a woman. It is the visible edge of an invisible truth. Behind her smile lies Leonardo's obsession with balance, between male and female, light and shadow, flesh and spirit, between the human and the divine, and perhaps between genius and madness. As the music fades, we return to her face one last time. The light flickers, her smile seems to change. For a moment, her lips move or seem to. It's an illusion, but one that has haunted viewers for centuries. Leonardo da Vinci left us thousands of pages of notes. The narrator concludes softly, but he never wrote a single line explaining this smile. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe he painted his confession in plain sight, knowing that only those who looked deeply enough would ever feel its truth. A single candle burns beside the painting. The screen darkens again. The final words echo into silence. Every masterpiece hides its maker, and sometimes the eyes that watch us are trying to tell us what we were never meant to know. The hills of Tuscany roll beneath a soft morning mist. A boy runs through the olive groves, chasing the shadow of a bird. He lifts a feather to the light, his eyes fixed on the delicate structure of its veins. He doesn't know it yet, but that feather, light as thought, precise as geometry, will haunt him for the rest of his life. His name is Leonardo. He was born in 1452, an illegitimate child in the tiny village of Vinci. His father, a notary, his mother, a peasant girl. No title, no inheritance, no promise of greatness. In the eyes of Florence's rigid society, he was invisible. And yet, that very obscurity would become his freedom. The boy who belonged nowhere would learn to see everything. From an early age, Leonardo's mind worked like a mirror, not just reflecting the world, but taking it apart. He drew constantly. The curls of water in a bucket, the curve of a smile, the pattern of clouds. Every motion was a mystery to be solved. He once wrote that nature was his only teacher, and indeed, she was the only one patient enough to answer his endless questions. When other children saw birds, he saw engines. When they saw rivers, he saw arteries. His notebooks later show sketches of both, identical in form, pulsing with life. The boy was already making connections others could not yet imagine. That the body of man and the body of earth were one and the same design. At 16, his father recognized the boy's strange gift and took him to Florence, the beating heart of the Renaissance. It was a city of contradictions, of beauty and betrayal, of faith and corruption. Churches towered above the streets, their walls covered in art meant to glorify God. Yet those same walls hid the whispers of sin, politics, and ambition. In Florence, everything was possible, and nothing was safe. Leonardo entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, a sculptor, painter, and engineer whose studio thrummed with creativity. It was more than a place of work. It was a laboratory of imagination. Apprentices ground pigments, melted bronze, mixed chemicals, and debated philosophy. Here, young Leonardo learned to turn vision into form, to make the invisible real. He studied anatomy by dissecting animal carcasses. He mixed his own paints from minerals and herbs, experimenting with tones that could capture both shadow and light. Verrocchio noticed his apprentice's obsession with realism, the way Leonardo's hands trembled not from fear, but from awe. There's an old story. While painting the baptism of Christ, Verrocchio asked Leonardo to paint one of the angels. When he saw the result, the softness of the flesh, the light shimmering in the angel's hair, the master put down his brush and swore he would never paint again. The pupil had surpassed the teacher. From that moment, Leonardo's destiny began to unfold. But genius, in its earliest form, is indistinguishable from madness. He was known for leaving works unfinished, consumed by curiosity, drawn away by new obsessions before old ones were done. To him, completion was a kind of death. The moment you stop questioning, the mind begins to rot. He filled page after page with notes, not in Latin, the language of scholars, but in everyday Italian, written backward as though seen in a mirror. Some said it was to hide his secrets. Others claimed it was simply easier for his left hand. But the truth might be simpler still. Leonardo didn't write for others. He wrote for himself, in a language only he could read, because his thoughts moved faster than words. He studied the flight of birds with manic fascination, sketching wings and air currents, calculating how a man might soar. Centuries before the first plane, Leonardo dreamed of conquering the sky. He wrote, "Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward." But for all his designs, he never built one that truly flew. Perhaps that failure tormented him, or perhaps it was the pursuit itself that mattered. He was a man driven by questions that had no answers. Why does water curve as it falls? Why does light bend through air? What force drives the pulse within the wrist? He saw patterns everywhere, in the branches of trees, the spirals of shells, the folds of cloth. To him, nature was not random. It was a great machine powered by mathematics and mystery, each part bound to every other by invisible threads. In this restless search for understanding, Leonardo's art began to change. Where other painters sought to glorify the saints, he sought to understand them. He painted the way light kissed skin, the way sorrow lived in the corners of the mouth. He turned emotion into geometry. And yet, even in his earliest portraits, there was always something unsettling. A stillness too deliberate, an expression too knowing. It was as if his subjects were not being seen, but examined. Behind the beauty there was dissection. Behind the holiness there was science. His notebooks show a mind unwilling to believe in boundaries. He drew machines of war beside sketches of angelic faces. He studied human anatomy not only to heal but to comprehend the mechanics of death. He wrote prayers beside equations, as if faith and physics were one and the same scripture. But Florence, for all its brilliance, had no patience for such blasphemous curiosity. Whispers followed him, about his private life, his strange habits, his refusal to conform. There were accusations once, swiftly silenced, but the wound of suspicion lingered. Leonardo learned early that genius was not protection. Knowledge, in his time, was dangerous. Still, he could not stop. The world was too beautiful, too mysterious. Every moment of existence seemed to demand study. When others saw divine order, he saw design, a blueprint waiting to be understood. At night, he would walk along the Arno River, watching moonlight scatter on the water. The ripples formed patterns that echoed the curls of hair he painted, the spirals in his sketches of storms. He began to suspect that beauty itself was a form of truth, that to depict it faithfully was to glimpse the mind of the Creator. That belief would define his life. And yet, for all his study, Leonardo remained profoundly alone. His notebooks speak of loneliness in the language of curiosity. Questions without answers, diagrams without explanations. He was surrounded by admirers, yet understood by no one. The boy from Vinci had grown into a man who could see the entire world, but belonged to none of it. He once wrote, "Learning never exhausts the mind." But between those lines, another message hides, one of exhaustion beyond words. For each mystery he unraveled, two more appeared. The closer he came to truth, the further it receded. Still, he chased it. By the time he left Florence, he had already begun to suspect something extraordinary, that art was not merely imitation, but revelation, that the act of creation was a form of divine theft, a way to steal light from heaven and trap it on canvas. And Leonardo da Vinci was ready to steal from the gods. The next chapter of his life would take him into the courts of princes and warlords, into the shadows of power where beauty and death intertwined. But here, in his beginnings, the seeds were already sown. A mind both illuminated and cursed, driven by a hunger the world could never satisfy. In the silence between invention and obsession, a legend was born. The candlelight trembles on the surface of a wooden desk. Sheets of parchment lie scattered like fallen leaves, covered in strange drawings. Human skulls, dissected limbs, wheels, wings, spirals, storms. And across every page, words that flow from right to left, mirrored and unreadable. To most eyes, they look like nonsense. But to Leonardo da Vinci, they were the language of his own mind, private, precise, and protected. He writes as if he's racing time itself. Notes on anatomy spill into observations of water currents, followed by sketches of catapults and musical instruments. The pages feel alive, restless, as though they might move when no one is watching. These notebooks, the famous codices, are not mere journals. They are vaults. They contain the mind of a man who trusted no one but the page. Why did he write backward? Scholars have debated for centuries. Some say it was because he was left-handed, that mirror writing prevented the ink from smudging. Others insist it was his way of keeping secrets in a world eager to steal them. But perhaps it was something deeper. Perhaps Leonardo needed to look at the world through reflection, as if reality itself could only be understood when seen in reverse. He lived in an age when knowledge was both sacred and forbidden. The church claimed dominion over truth and curiosity. The kind that sliced open corpses and measured the angles of light was perilously close to heresy. Leonardo knew that his questions could destroy him, so he learned to hide them in plain sight. Every page is a battlefield between revelation and restraint. He records the flow of blood through the heart but stops short of suggesting that life itself is mechanical. He studies the symmetry of the human face but never declares that beauty is merely geometry. He knew how to ask questions without speaking them aloud. In these secret pages, Leonardo revealed his truest self, not the courtly painter praised by princes, but a restless investigator of creation. He saw the divine in the smallest details, but he feared what that understanding might cost him. He once wrote, "I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough, we must apply." Yet he also wrote, "The greatest deception men suffer is from their own opinions." Between those two sentences lies the core of his torment, the desire to know and the terror of being wrong. His notebooks were written as if he expected no one else to read them, and maybe that was the point. To him, secrecy was survival. Florence was filled with rivals and spies, and genius was currency. His inventions, bridges that folded, cannons that rotated, flying machines, were too valuable to be shared freely. If an idea could change the balance of power, it was safer locked in ink. Sometimes, his words shift from description to confession. He wonders about the nature of the soul. He speculates whether the human mind is bound by flesh or if thought exists beyond the body. He writes about water as if it were alive, a creature that breathes and remembers. These are not the writings of a man content with the visible world. They are the diary of someone haunted by what lies beneath it. Late at night, Leonardo often worked alone. Witnesses described him bent over a candle, his long hair falling like a curtain as he drew lines too fine to see. He could spend hours watching how oil spread across a bowl of water, fascinated by how colors blended and broke apart. To anyone else, it was trivial. To him, it was the secret of creation, the hidden architecture of beauty itself. He filled thousands of pages with ideas that the world would not rediscover for centuries. Designs for helicopters, tanks, robots, even theories of geology and optics that anticipated modern science. But what makes these pages truly unsettling is not their brilliance. It's their silence. Leonardo never published them. He never sought to explain them. It was as if he believed humanity wasn't ready. And maybe he was right, because between the diagrams and notes, something else lurks. An obsession with control, with precision so absolute it borders on cruelty. He dissected bodies not out of cruelty but out of hunger for understanding. Yet in every drawing of flesh, there is a strange coldness. A man who could paint love and sorrow with such tenderness could also reduce the human form to lines and measurements, as if divinity could be mapped. It's easy to forget that Leonardo was not just a painter but an engineer of destruction. Among the notebook's pages of beauty lie sketches of siege weapons, cannons, mortars, armored vehicles, devices meant to tear cities apart. He wrote to his patrons promising machines that could destroy the walls of the strongest fortress. What kind of mind could design both angels and annihilation? Perhaps the same kind that saw no difference between them. The mirror writing becomes more than concealment. It becomes metaphor. Leonardo's world was a mirror world. Everything inverted, every truth containing its own shadow. To him, light was born from darkness, knowledge from ignorance. The reflection wasn't just how he wrote, it was how he thought. When he looked at his own face in a mirror, he did not see himself. He saw a problem to be solved. The same man who painted immortal beauty could not bear to be ordinary. He sought symmetry in himself, dissecting his own reflection the way he dissected the human body. The mirror pages of his journals are an echo of that endless self-examination. Over time, his notebooks multiplied, scattered across years and cities, from Florence to Milan, from Venice to Rome. They would outlive him, hidden in the homes of collectors and the vaults of kings. But during his lifetime, they were his most intimate companions. He never married, had no family, and few trusted friends. The only constant presence was the quiet scratch of his pen and the whisper of turning pages. If we could enter those notebooks, truly enter them, we might hear more than his thoughts. We might hear his fear. The fear that knowledge would damn him, that curiosity might pull back the veil of God and find nothing underneath. The fear that the closer he came to truth, the less human he would become. He knew how dangerous ideas could be. He lived in a world where Giordano Bruno would one day burn for heresy, where Galileo would be silenced. Leonardo escaped such fate not by obedience, but by concealment. He survived because his genius was invisible until it was safe to be admired. The camera might now linger on a single page, a drawing of an embryo curled in a womb, surrounded by notes written backward. The image is tender, sacred, almost unbearably human. But the text around it reads like an equation. Life itself reduced to form and function. It's breathtaking and chilling all at once. The tenderness of God drawn by the hand of a scientist. As the candle burns lower, Leonardo closes one of his notebooks, seals it with a cord, and sets it aside. His hand rests on it for a long moment, as if he's reluctant to let it go. Then, quietly, he whispers a prayer, or perhaps a formula, and blows out the flame. Darkness swallows the room, but the pages remain, filled with secrets only he can read. Centuries later, we still struggle to decipher them. We build machines to analyze his handwriting, to decode his drawings, to reconstruct his lost inventions. But perhaps what we're really trying to decode is not his knowledge, but his loneliness, the solitude of a man who knew too much and trusted no one with the burden of it. And in that darkness, illuminated by the last trace of candlelight, the thought lingers. The world celebrated Leonardo for what he showed us, but feared him for what he chose to hide. Florence, city of light and shadow. In the late 15th century, it is a furnace of genius and danger. Beneath its painted ceilings and golden domes, power shifts like the flicker of a candle. Every stone street hums with contradiction. Faith and corruption, art and espionage, devotion and deceit. It is a place where creation and destruction share the same breath, and where men like Leonardo da Vinci learn to hide their brilliance behind polite smiles. The Medici rule here, patrons of art and manipulators of destiny. Their palaces glitter with frescoes and marble, yet their power is stitched together by secret debts and whispered threats. To walk in their favor is to rise like the dawn. To fall from it is to vanish into darkness. Florence rewards genius, but only if genius bends its knee. Leonardo, now in his 30s, has become a master without equal. His paintings stun with precision, his inventions promise miracles. But Florence, dazzling as it is, offers him little peace. Every commission is entangled in politics. Every brushstroke must flatter someone. To paint a face is to risk painting an allegiance. He begins to understand that art is not only a pursuit of beauty, it is a weapon, and each painting is a silent negotiation with power. His reputation grows, but so does his discomfort. He dresses in rose-colored tunics, refuses to eat meat, keeps company with musicians, philosophers, and misfits. The city whispers, brilliant, yes, but strange. They call him aloof, indecipherable. Rumors cling to him like the smell of oil paint. Rumors of forbidden thoughts, forbidden loves. Leonardo learns early that Florence smiles in daylight and sharpens its knives at night. Yet he cannot leave. The city feeds him, challenges him, terrifies him. Its cathedrals rise like questions. Its workshops burn with invention. The same streets that birthed Botticelli and Machiavelli also host spies and assassins in the employ of dukes and popes. It is here that Leonardo begins to move among the powerful, painting their portraits by day and designing their machines of war by night. In Verrocchio's shadow he had learned technique, but in Florence's shadow he learns survival. He observes everything, the way the Medici conduct business through art, how alliances are signed with marble statues and sealed with frescoes. A painting can ruin or redeem a man. Leonardo sees this and grows wary. He is no longer satisfied with beauty alone. He wants to understand control. He begins to attend anatomy studies in secret, dissecting bodies taken from the hospitals of Santa Maria Nuova. The work is dangerous, even blasphemous, yet he cannot resist. The human form is the architecture of God, he says, and he must understand its blueprint. By candlelight, he opens what the Church calls sacred, not to defy it, but to see how the divine machinery truly moves. His drawings from this period are astonishing, precise to the point of obsession. But what he finds unsettles him. Flesh is not perfection. It decays. Beneath the beauty of creation lies rot and silence. Perhaps that is when he begins to understand Florence in a new way. The city itself is a body, beautiful, breathing, and secretly diseased. Its cathedrals are bones. Its politics, the bloodstream of ambition. Its faith, a fragile heart that beats only to appear alive. Leonardo sketches machines, but in truth, he is sketching Florence itself. As the years pass, his relationships with patrons grow strained. He accepts commissions and abandons them halfway, driven from project to project by restless curiosity. The adoration of the Magi remains unfinished. He begins new work and discards it as if completion were a kind of betrayal. Each piece feels like a fragment of something larger he cannot yet see. One evening, during a festival arranged by Lorenzo de' Medici, Leonardo unveils an astonishing spectacle. Mechanical lions that walk and open their chests to release lilies. The crowd gasps. The Duke applauds. But behind the wonder, Leonardo feels nothing. The applause is hollow. The machine works, but what has it revealed? Only that beauty can distract men from their own emptiness. Around him, Florence grows more perilous. The Medici's control falters. The preacher Savonarola rises, thundering against vanity and sin. Bonfires consume paintings, books, instruments. Art itself becomes suspect. For the first time, Leonardo sees how quickly civilization can devour its own light. His patrons flee, and so must he. Before leaving, he walks once more through the streets that raised him. The Arno's dark reflection, the scent of oil and smoke, the sound of church bells tolling over the murmur of markets. He realizes the city has taught him everything he needs to know about mankind, that brilliance and cruelty often share the same heart. Still, he leaves quietly, not in bitterness, but with a strange serenity. Florence has been his teacher and his cage. It has given him art and shown him hypocrisy. It has revealed the delicate balance between beauty and deceit, and he will carry that lesson into every canvas he touches. From this point on, Leonardo begins to live two lives. One, the world sees, the graceful painter, the courteous courtier, the man of invention. The other, hidden and dangerous, the seeker of forbidden knowledge. The notebooks multiply. His machines become darker. Siege towers, armored vehicles, weapons powered by compressed air. They seem to mock his earlier innocence, the boy who once studied feathers and flight. Yet, in these inventions, there is still wonder. He believes that understanding destruction is part of understanding creation. Every gear, every lever, every curve is drawn with reverence, as though even violence could reveal something divine. Perhaps this is Florence's final gift to him, the understanding that purity does not exist. Every light casts a shadow. At night, Leonardo dreams of floods and storms. His sketches fill with turbulent water, twisting figures, chaos in motion. They are not fantasies. They are prophecies. He begins to see human history as a cycle: creation, corruption, collapse. Florence was not unique. It was simply the most honest. It showed him that mankind's greatest beauty arises from its own ruin. When the invitation comes from Ludovico Sforza, Duke of Milan, Leonardo does not hesitate. The letter he sends is not one of art, but of war. He offers his services as an engineer. I can build bridges, siege engines, and instruments of defense and offense. Only at the end does he mention that he can also paint. It is a calculated deception, one Florence has taught him well. To survive, he must first promise power. Beauty can wait. As he rides north, leaving the city behind, he turns once to look back. The skyline glows in twilight, the dome of the cathedral catching the last light of day. He knows he will never truly escape it. Florence is a mirror he will carry inside forever, a reflection of everything radiant and corrupt in the human soul. Years later, when he paints the Last Supper, those lessons will surface again. The calm faces hiding fear, the beauty concealing betrayal. Florence taught him to see that truth is never pure, that faith and deceit are painted in the same color. The city fades behind him, swallowed by distance. Ahead lies Milan, a court of intrigue, ambition, and danger. Leonardo feels both excitement and dread. He has traded one mask for another. But as the stars begin to rise over the Tuscan hills, he allows himself a small smile. He may be leaving Florence, but the city of masks will never leave him. It has taught him the art of concealment, the price of genius, and the terrible knowledge that to see the world clearly is to live forever in its shadows. By candlelight, Leonardo's hands move over the soft, pale forms of human flesh. The room is silent except for the faint drip of blood from a carefully opened corpse, a sound that would make most men recoil. But not him. To Leonardo, this is not horror. It is revelation. Every vein, every tendon, every tiny muscle is a pathway to understanding, a language through which nature whispers its secrets. He has long been obsessed with the human body, not as a painter seeking beauty, but as a student seeking truth. Flesh is a puzzle, life a mechanism. He studies the way muscles flex, how joints rotate, how the heart pumps in relentless rhythm. He sketches diagrams in his mirrored script, noting angles, pressures, and proportions. These are meticulous studies, an anatomy of God made tangible. The church frowns on his work. Dissecting human corpses is dangerous, even blasphemous. Rumors begin to circulate. Yet Leonardo is undeterred. To him, morality is a secondary concern. Understanding is paramount. God, he believes, is not offended by inquiry. Ignorance is the true sin. Each incision of the scalpel, each carefully shaded sketch, is an act of devotion as much as curiosity. He is not content with observing only the surface. He examines the skeleton, mapping its arches, curves, and connections. The skull becomes a cathedral of bone. The spine, a column supporting the temple of flesh. The heart fascinates him most of all, a simple pump yet miraculous in its precision. He writes notes in tiny script, pondering how life can emerge from such mechanical order. In his mind, divinity and machinery are intertwined. Leonardo's fascination is not morbid. It is awe. He marvels at how the human body can heal, adapt, and survive. He studies wounds and fractures, the way ligaments stretch, the way blood nourishes. Every dissection teaches him more than anatomy. It teaches him philosophy. Life is fragile, yet intricately designed. Death is inevitable, yet revealing. These lessons seep into his art. The curves of the Madonna's arms, the twist of a hand in the Last Supper, the careful tilt of a head, each movement is informed by knowledge few dare to acquire. His paintings are alive because they are informed by the same precision he applies in dissection. Flesh is geometry, emotion is structure, light is truth. But obsession carries its cost. Leonardo becomes isolated. Few can tolerate the intensity of his focus. Apprentices come and go, frightened by the smell of formaldehyde, the stains of blood, the endless questions that pour from his lips. Conversations about faith and philosophy often end in silence, as if he is speaking a language the world cannot comprehend. He studies not only humans but the natural world, seeking patterns that connect one form to another. Birds in flight, the spiral of a shell, the flow of rivers. Every shape obeys laws that he can measure and replicate. This is no longer simply anatomy. It is cosmology. Leonardo sees the human body as a microcosm of the universe, a vessel through which all knowledge can be traced. And yet, he is aware of his own limitations. Flesh decays, bones break, skin ages. Even as he sketches the perfection of muscles and sinew, he is confronted by impermanence. This tension, between the beauty of design and the inevitability of decay, haunts him. In his art, he seeks to capture the eternal, even while acknowledging the temporal. His notebooks reveal a mind teetering between science and spirituality. One page may contain a detailed diagram of a heart valve. The next, a meditation on the soul's movement within the body. Leonardo does not see these pursuits as separate. For him, understanding the body is understanding God. Dissection is worship. Observation is prayer. In this period, he also begins to explore motion, inspired by the way muscles contract and expand. He sketches the mechanics of walking, running, jumping, and even swimming. He imagines machines that mimic human motion, devices that extend human capability. Wings designed to carry a man through the air are drawn alongside careful studies of the human hand. Leonardo's mind refuses to differentiate between invention and understanding. The intensity of his study leaves him both exhilarated and exhausted. His notebooks, filled with mirrored script and dense diagrams, are proof of nights spent in solitary inquiry. He measures everything, sketches everything, questions everything. Sleep is brief. Meals are mechanical. The world beyond the walls of his workshop fades, leaving only the pulse of life itself to capture. Yet in all this observation, there is a quiet poetry. Leonardo does not see flesh as mere machine. He sees it as art. The curve of a rib, the stretch of a tendon, the delicate network of veins. All these become brushstrokes in a larger painting, a masterpiece that exists not on canvas, but in understanding. His love for the human form is as intense as any lover's. He studies it, admires it, venerates it. This period of obsession is also a period of fear. Leonardo knows that what he pursues is dangerous knowledge. The church condemns anatomical study. The city is rife with political intrigue. And yet he presses on, driven by a need that outweighs fear. Each incision, each sketch, each note is an act of courage. He is willing to transgress mortal rules in pursuit of divine truth. In his solitude, he also confronts mortality. Observing the decay of bodies forces him to confront the fragility of life. He writes of death not as an end, but as a revelation. In the collapse of flesh, he sees patterns, structures, and lessons for the living. The body, even in decay, is a source of knowledge, a teacher that demands both respect and scrutiny. Through it all, Leonardo's obsession is never merely technical. It is deeply human. He seeks to know what makes us alive, what binds the spirit to the body, and how the visible can reveal the invisible. He sketches, measures, writes, and dreams, building a bridge between observation and understanding, between life and art, between God and man. By the end of these years, Leonardo emerges transformed. He has mapped the human form with precision unmatched by any contemporary. He has glimpsed the mechanics of life and death. He has begun to see patterns that extend beyond the flesh, into the natural world, into the stars, into the very fabric of creation. The man who once sketched birds and feathers is now a master of anatomy, physiology, and philosophy. A scholar whose canvas is not only paint, but the very essence of existence. And yet, for all his knowledge, a shadow lingers. Leonardo sees too much, understands too much. The beauty he captures is tinged with mortality. The divine he seeks is always just beyond reach. In his pursuit of perfection, he confronts both the glory and the horror of life. The candlelight flickers, the sketches stare back, and the room seems alive with the secrets of flesh, spirit, and eternity. In this delicate tension between curiosity and reverence, Leonardo discovers a truth that will define his art for the rest of his life. That understanding the human body is not just science, nor merely beauty, nor even spirituality alone. It is all of these, fused together, a mirror to the mysteries of existence itself. The Last Supper hangs in a refectory, its colors faded, the plaster cracking under centuries of time. Yet even in decay, the painting pulses with hidden life. Leonardo da Vinci did not simply depict a meal. He captured a moment teetering on the edge of betrayal and revelation. Every apostle's gesture, every shadow, every tilt of the head has been calculated to convey not just narrative, but secret intention. As Leonardo worked, he experimented. His new technique, applying tempera and oil on dry plaster, was revolutionary yet unstable. Within years, the surface began to flake, the paint peeling like dried skin. Many saw only deterioration, but Leonardo saw opportunity. In the fading, the obscured, the imperfect, he embedded subtler patterns. Geometry emerges in the angles of hands, the placement of dishes, the spacing between figures. Hidden in plain sight are triangles, circles, and spirals that suggest more than composition, they suggest meaning. Some historians have suggested he encoded secret letters, symbols, and even numbers within the arrangement of the apostles. Judas sits not apart, but intertwined, a living puzzle within the group. The way his shoulder aligns with the table, the curve of his hands, the darkened tones that surround him, each choice seems deliberate, as if Leonardo is whispering a message that only those attuned to perception could read. He is obsessed with the human condition. Each face expresses a precise emotion: fear, doubt, sorrow, confusion, guilt. The apostles are not static icons. They are living, breathing participants in a drama of moral consequence. Yet even in their realism, there is abstraction, a deliberate imbalance that teases the mind. Light does not fall naturally. Perspective stretches subtly, drawing the viewer into the unseen center of the painting, the space of tension between the sacred and the profane. Leonardo's notes from this period suggest that he viewed the work as more than a religious commission. He believed that through art, hidden truths could be revealed. He sought to capture not just what the eye sees, but what the mind perceives, the intersection of body, soul, and intellect. Each apostle becomes a cipher, each gesture a clue to the larger order he perceives in the universe. It is here, in these secret patterns, that Leonardo's darker obsessions emerge. The human body is precise, the soul elusive, the mind can deceive, the heart betrays. He had dissected more than flesh in his studies. He had dissected human nature itself. And now, through brush and pigment, he reconstructs it, exposing the thin veneer that separates loyalty from treachery. The room in which he paints becomes an extension of his vision. He measures the angles of light as it falls through windows, mapping the movement of the sun across the fresco. He adjusts each figure's posture, each table edge, to align with an invisible grid, a secret geometry that unites the temporal with the eternal. To any observer, it is merely art. To Leonardo, it is revelation. There is a tension between permanence and impermanence. He is aware that his experimental technique may fail, that his masterpiece could decay. Yet he does not compromise. The cracks, the instability, even the inevitable loss of pigment are, in a sense, part of the design. Nothing in life is permanent, and Leonardo understands that beauty and truth are inseparable from vulnerability. The placement of Judas is particularly telling. Unlike traditional depictions, he is not isolated in shadow. Instead, he leans forward, almost merging with the figures beside him. His betrayal is subtle, almost internal. Leonardo seems fascinated not by the act of treachery itself, but by the psychological complexity behind it. The viewer senses the danger, the tension, the moral ambiguity, and feels complicit in the unfolding drama. This approach would have been shocking in its time. Religious art was expected to simplify, to moralize, to provide clear distinctions between good and evil. Leonardo refuses this simplicity. He paints ambiguity, complexity, the interplay of human emotions that defy tidy categorization. His genius lies in the ability to make the profound subtle, to encode questions in the angles of a hand or the shadow of a robe. Beyond symbolism, there is the whisper of personal confession. Some scholars suggest that Leonardo may have inserted himself subtly into the composition, a hidden observer within the narrative. The man who studies betrayal, who dissects the mechanics of life, may have been questioning his own loyalty, his own place in the human drama. The painting becomes not only a depiction of Christ's last moments but a mirror for Leonardo's own doubts, fears, and moral examinations. Time, however, is unkind. Within decades, the work begins to crumble, yet its coded truths remain partially intact. Scholars centuries later have used modern technology to uncover underdrawings, hidden sketches, even entirely different compositions beneath the surface. In these layers, another story emerges, one that Leonardo may have meant to conceal, or perhaps knew would only reveal itself when the world was ready to look. Even the smallest details are deliberate. The bread, the wine, the folds of cloth. They are not merely props but instruments in a symphony of hidden meaning. Angles converge at points that are mathematically precise, echoing patterns Leonardo observed in nature and the cosmos. The painting becomes a map, spiritual, emotional, and intellectual, layered upon the wall like a three-dimensional code. Leonardo's obsession with capturing hidden truths is mirrored in his studies of light and shadow, or chiaroscuro. The subtle gradations he employs here give depth not only to forms but to intention. Shadows are not merely absence of light. They are carriers of meaning, guides for perception. They direct the eye, shape the mind, and hint at secrets that cannot be spoken aloud. For Leonardo, art is never merely decorative. It is investigative. Every brushstroke probes the mystery of existence. The Last Supper is not a static scene. It is a living experiment, an interface between observer and observed. The apostles are actors, the table a stage, the room itself a laboratory for human emotion. Leonardo has transformed theology into science, myth into measurement, narrative into code. And yet, for all its intellectual rigor, there is the undeniable human dimension. The painting vibrates with tension, anticipation, and fear. The betrayal is inevitable, the moment fleeting. The viewer cannot intervene. The psychological drama unfolds inexorably, compelling empathy, fear, and reflection. Leonardo does not merely depict a moment. He traps the observer within it. As the camera pans over the mural, the cracks, the fading pigments, the whisper of centuries, one realizes that Leonardo's genius lies as much in what is hidden as in what is seen. The physical decay mirrors the moral and philosophical ambiguities he sought to explore. The Last Supper is fragile, yet eternal, not because it survives untouched, but because its secrets endure, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond the surface. In this moment, one understands a crucial truth. Leonardo did not paint simply to delight the eye. He painted to challenge the mind, to question perception, and to hide messages that would outlive him. His work is a dialogue across centuries, a whisper in the wall, a puzzle encoded in color and geometry. Those who approach it too casually may miss its depth. Those who study it deeply may confront unsettling questions about loyalty, betrayal, morality, and the nature of human understanding itself. The Last Supper, in all its decaying glory, remains one of the most enigmatic creations in the history of art. It is a testament to Leonardo's obsession with capturing the imperceptible, with revealing the hidden order beneath human behavior. It is the first step in a journey into the artist's mind, a journey where nothing is accidental, and every shadow may conceal a secret waiting to be understood. The candlelight flickers across the fresco, revealing figures frozen in tension. The moment Leonardo captures is fleeting, a single heartbeat stretched into eternity. Judas leans forward, elbow on the table, his hand reaching for the bread, his eyes averted. But the genius of Leonardo is in the subtlety. Judas is not monstrous, he is human. He is curiosity, fear, and desire incarnate, caught in the act of betrayal yet struggling against his own conscience. Leonardo studied human behavior as meticulously as he studied anatomy. Every twitch of a muscle, every glance, every fold of clothing was a data point in the vast experiment of life he conducted through art. He believed that emotion could be mapped as precisely as the veins of a hand or the spirals of a shell. In this, the Last Supper becomes not just a religious tableau, but a psychological study, an early exploration of what it means to deceive and to be deceived. Yet there is a tension here that has always puzzled historians. Judas is placed among the apostles, part of the circle, and yet subtly apart. His hand mirrors the curve of the table, yet his gaze diverges. The positioning seems deliberate, almost mathematical, as though Leonardo intends the viewer to recognize a hidden order behind apparent chaos. The betrayal, while inevitable, is not sensationalized. It is nuanced, layered with moral ambiguity. In his notebooks, Leonardo writes about duplicity, cautioning against the assumptions of outward appearances. He examines human behavior, both in public and private, tracing the invisible lines between intention and action. To him, Judas is more than a biblical figure. He is a mirror of every human's potential for both loyalty and treachery. Each gesture, each expression, each subtle movement is a clue to understanding the mechanics of morality. Leonardo's fascination with betrayal extends beyond theology. It is personal, psychological, and philosophical. He lived in a world where patrons could be fickle, friends unreliable, and alliances fleeting. Florence had taught him that power and beauty are inseparable from danger. The Medici, Savonarola, and countless other figures had demonstrated that loyalty could be as transient as light itself. His depiction of Judas is informed by this constant awareness that betrayal is not merely external, but embedded in the human heart. The placement of Judas also creates a visual tension that guides the viewer's perception. The line of sight, the angles of arms, the convergence of gazes, everything directs attention without force, leading the eye toward a center of inevitability, the moment of revelation when truth and consequence collide. Leonardo was fascinated by this orchestration of perception. He believed that by controlling what others see, he could reveal what they do not yet understand. His study of anatomy informs this as well. The subtle contraction of Judas's fingers, the tension in his wrist, the slight hunch of his shoulder, each is drawn with scientific precision. Leonardo observed countless bodies, dissecting them to understand not just structure, but potential for action. Every motion he depicted is believable, even inevitable, because he understood the mechanics beneath it. Betrayal is not abstract. It is physical, manifest in the body before the mind. Beyond the mechanics, there is a moral philosophy embedded in the scene. Leonardo seems to suggest that betrayal is not black and white. Judas's act is foreseen, inevitable, and yet he struggles within it. Leonardo portrays this tension, forcing the viewer to consider the complexities of free will, guilt, and inevitability. The apostle is human, flawed, and tragically aware, embodying the duality that Leonardo often explored in life and art alike, the collision of knowledge and morality, desire and consequence. Some scholars have suggested that Leonardo may have used Judas as a stand-in for human curiosity and defiance. Just as he dissected bodies to understand the secrets within, Judas reaches for knowledge that cannot be contained. He embodies the dangerous impulse to act on insight, to step beyond prescribed moral boundaries. Leonardo's genius lies in this layering. Biblical narrative becomes psychological study, theological reflection becomes philosophical inquiry, art becomes experiment. The Last Supper also demonstrates Leonardo's understanding of narrative tension. He groups the apostles in threes, creating visual rhythms that mirror natural patterns observed in anatomy and geometry. Each cluster is a miniature story, a microcosm of interpersonal dynamics. The narrative flows outward from Christ, yet the undercurrents, the whispers, the glances, the invisible conflicts, dominate the composition. Leonardo is teaching the viewer to look not only at what is presented but at what is implied, at the silent movements that carry the weight of consequence. There is also the question of light and shadow. Leonardo manipulates chiaroscuro to highlight Judas subtly, contrasting him with the illumination that falls on Christ. This is not mere artistry. It is a deliberate method to encode meaning. Light becomes morality, shadow becomes doubt. The interaction of illumination and darkness reflects the moral tension of the scene, reinforcing Leonardo's belief that ethical understanding is inseparable from perception. The psychological depth Leonardo achieves is remarkable. He is not content with depicting physical action. He depicts the emotional state that precedes action. Judas is already isolated by subtle cues, yet remains physically close, creating tension and discomfort for the observer. Leonardo understood that anticipation, not resolution, drives engagement. The viewer is drawn into the moral and emotional labyrinth, complicit in the unfolding drama. And yet, despite the intensity, there is beauty. The curves, the folds, the proportions, they are mathematically precise, yet human and approachable. Leonardo blends scientific observation with aesthetic perfection, suggesting that understanding does not diminish beauty. It enhances it. The act of betrayal is horrific in potential, yet the execution is transcendent in its craftsmanship. Leonardo's choice to depict Judas not as grotesque but as human may reflect his broader philosophy. Knowledge, observation, and insight carry risks. To see clearly is to recognize both the light and the shadow within oneself. In this sense, Judas is universal, a symbol of the internal conflicts that every human faces when confronted with choice, desire, and conscience. For Leonardo, art is never merely representation. It is a study of life, morality, and consequence. The Last Supper is not simply a biblical scene. It is a meditation on human psychology, an exploration of decision and inevitability, a map of the moral and emotional currents that shape our existence. Each viewer, unknowingly, becomes part of the experiment, drawn into the complex web of observation and insight Leonardo weaves. As the camera lingers on Judas, one notices the tension in the fingertips, the slight tilt of the head, the tight curve of the spine. Leonardo has encoded the entire trajectory of betrayal, the impulse, the hesitation, the inevitable act, into a single frozen frame. It is the intersection of art, science, and philosophy, revealing a mind that sees far beyond what most men ever perceive. The brilliance of this depiction lies not only in technical mastery but in empathy. Leonardo does not condemn Judas. He illuminates the human condition. He shows that within every act of treachery lies conflict, reasoning, fear, and inevitability. The betrayal is tragic because it is understandable, and it is terrifying because it is universal. In studying Judas, Leonardo confronts a truth he will explore throughout his life: that genius is inseparable from moral complexity. Knowledge and perception carry responsibility. Observation is never neutral. To see clearly is to understand both the light and the shadow, and to live with the weight of what that understanding demands. This is the whisper in the wall, the subtle, unspoken lesson Leonardo embeds in his art. Human behavior, morality, and consequence are inseparable from observation. Betrayal is not a distant story. It is encoded in the body, the mind, and the soul. The Last Supper becomes a mirror, reflecting the potential for treachery and grace within every observer, demanding introspection as much as admiration. Leonardo's gaze lingers on the canvas, yet his mind is elsewhere, probing, dissecting, searching. The face he paints is calm, serene, almost ethereal. The lips curl in a subtle smile. The eyes follow with a lifelike depth that seems to watch the viewer even as they move. It is Mona Lisa, yet it is more than a portrait. It is a study, an experiment, a coded message. Every brushstroke carries meaning beyond the visible. Every shadow conceals a whisper. From the very first sketches, Leonardo sought to understand the human face not as a static form, but as a living landscape of thought and emotion. He observed muscles, studied light, and analyzed the interplay of nerves and bones that shape expression. Every smile, every frown, every raised eyebrow could be predicted, dissected, understood. And yet, the challenge of capturing subtlety, the infinitesimal fluctuation that betrays a thought, haunted him. The Mona Lisa is remarkable precisely because it defies certainty. The smile shifts depending on where one looks. From afar, it seems luminous, full of serenity. Up close, it wavers, almost skeptical, hinting at secrets the sitter may or may not know. Leonardo achieved this by exploiting the effects of sfumato, a technique he pioneered, which blends light and shadow into soft transitions so subtle that the edges of expression seem to dissolve. It is the illusion of life captured in pigment, and it is unsettling because the mind instinctively seeks clarity where none exists. Some historians argue that the painting is an allegory. Others believe it hides secret knowledge. There are whispers that the subject's eyes contain coded messages, that hidden symbols lie within the folds of her clothing, or that Leonardo himself is mirrored in her enigmatic expression. Perhaps all are true. Leonardo was fascinated by duality, the coexistence of opposites. Light and shadow, joy and sorrow, fidelity and betrayal, all converge in this one face. He studied not only the structure of the face but the psychology behind it. Human emotion is rarely straightforward. A person may smile while concealing fear, speak with sincerity while harboring doubt, betray even as they love. Leonardo understood these contradictions better than anyone of his time. The Mona Lisa becomes a canvas for these observations, a mirror for the observer as much as the subject. It is said that Leonardo returned to this painting again and again over years, each session an opportunity to refine, adjust, and probe deeper. He applied layers upon layers of translucent oil, capturing not merely the surface of skin, but the play of light within tissue, the subtle hints of veins, the translucency that makes flesh appear alive. The result is unsettling in its realism, yet abstract in its ambiguity. The viewer is drawn in, compelled to decipher, yet never fully able to resolve the mystery. The enigmatic smile becomes a metaphor for Leonardo's broader philosophy. Life itself is never entirely knowable. Truth is multifaceted, perception is subjective, and certainty is an illusion. In painting this smile, Leonardo captures the tension between appearance and reality, between what is shown and what is hidden. It is a subtle rebellion against the simplicity that society demands, a quiet challenge to those who think they can ever fully understand another human being. Beyond the technical mastery, there is an undercurrent of darkness, a shadow behind the calm visage. Leonardo had spent years dissecting corpses, analyzing the mechanics of life and the inevitability of death. The Mona Lisa's calmness may conceal knowledge of mortality, of impermanence, of the hidden structures that govern existence. It is a face that knows, that has witnessed both beauty and decay, and yet remains composed, a silent observer of the human condition. Some researchers have suggested that the background landscape is not merely decorative. The winding paths, the rivers, the distant mountains may mirror the internal world of the sitter, or of Leonardo himself. The duality of civilization and wilderness, of order and chaos, reflects a mind obsessed with contrasts. Just as the smile is simultaneously present and absent, the world behind her is both tangible and dreamlike, offering clues to an underlying order that eludes casual observation. Leonardo's obsession with perception is evident in the eyes. The Mona Lisa's gaze seems to follow, to engage, yet to remain unreadable. This effect is not accidental. Leonardo understood how the geometry of light and shadow interacts with the viewer's eye. Her eyes are alive not because of pigment, but because of mathematics, psychology, and relentless observation. They watch, they assess, they conceal. There is also a theory that Leonardo embedded subtle anatomical knowledge within the painting. The curves of her hands, the positioning of her neck, and even the faint outlines in the background may correspond to physiological structures, reflecting his lifelong study of the human form. In this way, Mona Lisa is not just art. It is science, philosophy, and secret knowledge all in one. Every layer contains a whisper, a code, a fragment of understanding meant to endure beyond his lifetime. The sitter herself remains a mystery. Was she Lisa Gerardini, the merchant's wife, or a composite of ideals, a symbolic representation of beauty, intelligence, and the unknown? Leonardo was rarely satisfied with mere replication. He sought to uncover the essence of life, and in doing so, he transformed his subject into a vessel for observation, reflection, and contemplation. The portrait becomes as much about the observer as the observed, a mirror of perception, thought, and curiosity. Leonardo's fascination with duality extended beyond his art. He explored machines of flight and instruments of war, anatomy and philosophy, faith and heresy. Every pursuit contained contradictions. Every experiment risked failure or discovery. The Mona Lisa encapsulates this tension. Perfection and ambiguity, beauty and enigma, knowledge and secrecy. To gaze upon it is to confront uncertainty while being irresistibly drawn toward understanding. Even the faintest details, the tilt of a shoulder, the curve of a finger, the play of shadows across the cheek, reveal his meticulous observation. Nothing is arbitrary. Everything is calculated. Yet the result feels natural, alive, effortless. This is the paradox Leonardo embraced throughout his life. The more precise the calculation, the more mysterious the effect. The closer one looks, the more one realizes that understanding is both accessible and perpetually elusive. In many ways, the Mona Lisa is a culmination of Leonardo's lifelong obsessions. The human form, the mechanics of perception, the interplay of light and shadow, and the hidden codes of reality. Every brushstroke is a testament to a mind that could not accept surface appearances. Every nuance challenges the viewer to look deeper, to question, to wonder. And so the smile endures, a whisper from Leonardo's mind across centuries. It conceals as much as it reveals, a shadow behind the calm, a secret embedded in perfection. In her eyes, one senses the culmination of a lifetime spent studying the human body, the natural world, and the labyrinthine corridors of human emotion. She watches and waits, silent yet commanding, inviting us to understand what perhaps cannot be fully known. Leonardo da Vinci moved through the world as though it were a puzzle designed for his mind alone. Every surface, every mechanism, every pattern of light and shadow was data, information waiting to be decoded. To him, nothing was merely as it appeared. A leaf drifting on a stream was not just a leaf. It was evidence of fluid dynamics. A flock of birds in flight was not merely a spectacle. It was geometry and aerodynamics, rhythm and mathematics in motion. Everything, he believed, had a hidden order, a secret to be discovered. He approached science with the same intensity he brought to painting. Observation was not casual. It was methodical, exhaustive, and relentless. Leonardo sketched constantly, documenting what he saw with astonishing precision. A single page might contain a diagram of a human hand alongside the flight patterns of birds, the eddies of a river, and the curve of a shell. Each drawing was both study and experiment, an attempt to bridge the known with the unknown. What set him apart was his refusal to accept conventional wisdom. Scholars of the time relied heavily on ancient texts, authorities whose words were treated as unchallengeable truth. Leonardo, by contrast, trusted only what he could see, measure, and test. He dissected human bodies despite legal and moral prohibitions. He measured the movement of water, the trajectory of projectiles, and the angles of light. Observation became his religion, experimentation his liturgy. Yet Leonardo did not merely observe, he concealed. He developed codes, mirrored writing, and encrypted diagrams. His notebooks, thousands of pages sprawling over decades, are filled with calculations, inventions, and anatomical studies, written in ways that would challenge any casual reader. Mirror script may have begun as a practical choice. Being left-handed, he could write without smudging the ink, but it became a method of secrecy. He was protecting knowledge that could be dangerous in the wrong hands, knowledge that blurred the line between creation and destruction, beauty and power. Among his most ambitious pursuits were designs for machines that could change the world. Flying devices inspired by birds, armored vehicles capable of sweeping through enemy ranks, and tools that could measure and manipulate nature itself. Many of these inventions were never built. Some would have failed catastrophically if attempted. Yet they reveal a mind that did not distinguish between the practical and the theoretical, between art and science, between life and the possibility of transformation. Leonardo's fascination with secrecy extended to his studies of human anatomy. He dissected bodies in secret, often late at night, documenting muscles, tendons, and organs with breathtaking detail. He was especially captivated by the heart and circulatory system, realizing long before modern science that it functioned as a pump. These studies were not purely academic, they were philosophical. He sought to understand the very mechanics of life, to uncover the hidden laws that governed existence itself. This obsession with concealed knowledge mirrors his approach to art. Just as the Mona Lisa's smile seems to hide more than it reveals, Leonardo's inventions and diagrams often encode insights beyond immediate comprehension. There is a deliberate tension between what is seen and what is implied, between knowledge offered and knowledge withheld. He understood that the value of insight often lies in its concealment, in the challenge of discovery, and in the subtle power it confers upon those capable of interpretation. He also studied the natural world obsessively, seeing patterns where others saw chaos. Water, for example, became a lifelong fascination. He observed currents, eddies, and vortices, sketching the flow with painstaking precision. He recorded the way rivers carve valleys, the motion of waves along the shore, the interaction of wind and water. These studies were not merely descriptive. They were predictive, anticipatory. He attempted to capture the principles governing nature itself, to decode the hidden algorithms that made the world function. Leonardo's obsession with secrecy extended beyond science and art into philosophy and morality. He often mused on the duality of existence, the interplay between visible and invisible, cause and consequence, knowledge and power. In his writings, he warned of the dangers of superficial understanding, urging readers, if they could decipher his code, to look deeper, to question, to perceive the hidden structures that govern reality. Knowledge, he implied, is as much a moral responsibility as it is an intellectual pursuit. The very act of recording was itself a form of secrecy. His notebooks were scattered, some unfinished, some deliberately obscured. He sometimes left diagrams without explanation, measurements without context, and notes in mirrored or cryptic script. He seemed aware that the more revolutionary the idea, the greater the need to shield it. What could be used to create life or to destroy it must not fall into careless hands. In this sense, Leonardo was a scientist of secrets as much as of structures. Even his artistic commissions carried hidden lessons. The Last Supper, for example, is not merely a biblical narrative. It is a psychological experiment, a study in moral tension, perception, and subtle geometry. Mona Lisa is more than a portrait. It is an investigation of human expression, perception, and ambiguity. In both cases, the art is simultaneously visible and invisible, offering knowledge to the attentive observer while concealing it from the casual glance. Leonardo's approach to secrecy was intertwined with his understanding of human nature. He recognized that knowledge is both dangerous and transformative. In the wrong hands, his designs for flight, for mechanics, or even for anatomy could be misused. The deliberate concealment of information was a protective measure, a way to ensure that discovery would occur only when the mind was prepared, the observer capable, and the consequences understood. This meticulous secrecy extended to his personal habits. He often moved in silence, avoiding attention, maintaining independence, and cultivating an aura of mystery. His notebooks were kept close, hidden in drawers, trunks, or carried surreptitiously. Apprentices glimpsed parts of his work but rarely understood its full scope. Even his patrons, awed as they were by his genius, did not always comprehend the depths of the knowledge he accumulated. And yet, Secrecy did not diminish the reach of his genius, it enhanced it. By embedding knowledge in layers, by encoding his discoveries, by creating art that was simultaneously literal and allegorical, Leonardo ensured that his influence would echo far beyond his lifetime. Those capable of perception could unlock his insights. Those unprepared would merely admire the surface beauty. In the end, Leonardo's science of secrets reflects the man himself. Brilliant, curious, cautious, and profound. He sought understanding, yet he respected the power of what he discovered. Knowledge was not merely to be accumulated, but interpreted, applied, and sometimes concealed. To observe was to wield power. To reveal without discretion was to invite chaos. Leonardo's genius lies not only in what he discovered but in how he chose to protect it. Art, science, anatomy, mechanics, philosophy, all became instruments of inquiry and concealment. Each stroke, each diagram, each observation was a layer in a vault, a coded testament to a mind that understood that truth can be as perilous as it is enlightening. This is the paradox of Leonardo da Vinci, a man who sought to know everything, yet hid that knowledge in plain sight. A painter who embedded science in beauty, an inventor who encoded morality in machinery, a philosopher who concealed insight within observation. The world sees his masterpieces, marvels at his inventions, studies his notebooks. But still, centuries later, many secrets remain, whispering from the pages, challenging us to see as Leonardo saw, to perceive the hidden order beneath the surface of reality. Leonardo da Vinci walked through his workshop, surrounded by sketches, gears, pulleys, and partially constructed machines, and the air was thick with oil, dust, and the faint tang of metal. To the casual observer, it may have seemed like chaos, a madman's collection of curiosities. Yet to Leonardo, every piece, every line, every scribble was part of a coherent system, a universe he was constructing in miniature. Each invention was not just a tool but a revelation, a bridge between observation and possibility. His notebooks contained dozens of designs for machines that defied the technology of his time. Flying devices inspired by birds, wings that could lift a human body into the air, helicopters powered by twisted reeds and linen, all sketched with meticulous attention to detail. These were not mere fantasies. Leonardo studied aerodynamics, the curvature of wings, the flow of air, and the mechanics of leverage, calculating angles and weights with precision. He imagined humans soaring above landscapes, a dream centuries ahead of its time. Yet flight was only one obsession. He envisioned armored vehicles that could roll into battle, catapults that could hurl stones with uncanny accuracy, mechanical arms that could extend human reach. Each machine was a synthesis of observation and imagination, a fusion of science and art. Leonardo did not merely copy nature. He sought to amplify it, to extend human capability into realms previously thought impossible. The genius of these machines lies not only in their creativity but in their understanding of physics, materials, and human anatomy. Leonardo observed the muscles and tendons of the body to engineer mechanisms that could mimic human movement. Levers and pulleys were designed with careful calculations, each gear positioned to transmit force efficiently. Even when the materials of his time made construction impractical, the principles were sound, a testament to his extraordinary intellect. Some of these inventions had darker implications. Leonardo designed war machines, mobile fortresses, cannons, and devices capable of destruction on a massive scale. He understood that knowledge itself was a kind of weapon. The same mind that painted serene faces and analyzed human anatomy could also envision tools of devastation. Florence, Milan, and the courts of Europe were rife with political intrigue, and Leonardo's patrons demanded both art and advantage. His genius, in part, was to disguise utility within beauty, to encode function within form. Yet he did not rush to build every machine. Some remained in the pages of his notebooks, never leaving the paper. He seemed aware of the potential consequences, both ethical and practical, of unleashing these inventions prematurely. In this restraint lies a deeper understanding. Leonardo recognized that the power of knowledge is inseparable from responsibility. To create without consideration of its impact was to flirt with disaster. He also explored hydraulics, the manipulation of water for human purposes. Canals, water wheels, flood control, and irrigation devices filled page after page. He dissected rivers like he dissected human bodies, observing currents, vortices, and pressure points. These observations informed both his machines and his understanding of nature as a complex system, governed by laws that could be measured, predicted, and harnessed. Flight, war, water, and mechanics were intertwined with his art. The precision he applied to anatomy and painting informed his engineering. Each sketch of a machine reveals a mind that seeks harmony between function and form, between beauty and utility. The mechanical and the aesthetic are inseparable. Each invention is a work of art, and each painting contains a blueprint of natural law. His designs often incorporated multiple layers of innovation. A single machine might combine wheels, pulleys, gears, and levers, all interacting in precise synchrony. Leonardo anticipated problems, experimenting with redundancy, balance, and efficiency long before the principles were formally understood. Even his unfinished models demonstrate insight into forces, friction, and energy transfer, showing that he was not simply dreaming. He was theorizing at the edge of practical physics. The practical limitations of materials did not deter him. He drew armored vehicles with curved plates intended to deflect projectiles, helicopters with central screws that would have required torsion and tensile strength beyond wood and canvas. To Leonardo, the impossible was an invitation to study, to innovate, to plan for a future in which human capability could meet human imagination. His work reads as prophecy, a vision centuries ahead of engineering reality. Some machines were whimsical, blending humor and curiosity with technical precision. He sketched mechanical lions that could walk and open their mouths, automated musical instruments, and self-propelled carts. These devices entertained, but also demonstrated principles of motion and force. Even play became an experiment, a way to explore the laws of physics and mechanics with elegance and subtlety. Yet there is a tension between creation and destruction in Leonardo's workshop. The same intellect that conceived beautiful flight and elegant automatons also imagined weapons capable of slaughter. He navigated a moral labyrinth. The pursuit of knowledge carried both enlightenment and risk. His machines were a reflection of the duality in his worldview, where art, science, and ethics collided, and where genius itself was inseparable from potential danger. In his notes, Leonardo sometimes mused about the nature of invention and secrecy. He wrote of knowledge as both a gift and a weapon, warning that insight in the wrong hands could be catastrophic. He employed mirrored writing and coded sketches, ensuring that only those capable of careful study could access the full breadth of his understanding. Each page became a vault, protecting wisdom and peril alike. Leonardo's mechanical imagination also intersected with his study of anatomy. He observed joints and muscles, translating their function into mechanical analogs. His flying machines mimic the skeleton of birds. His war engines echo the leverage and tension found in human limbs. There is a continuity across his disciplines. Art informs science, science informs art, and both illuminate the mysteries of life. Many of these inventions were never constructed, yet they influenced centuries of thinkers who came after him. His conceptual designs anticipated helicopters, tanks, bridges, and countless engineering principles long before they were realized. Even in failure or impracticality, Leonardo's work demonstrates a mind exploring the limits of possibility, mapping the terrain of human ingenuity. To walk among Leonardo's sketches is to witness a mind that refused limitation. He thought not only of the present but of what the future could achieve, envisioning a world in which humans could rise above their constraints through knowledge, observation, and invention. Each drawing is both instruction and prophecy, a challenge to those who would follow to understand and expand upon his vision. His workshop, then, was a theater of potential. Gears, sketches, and half-assembled devices were not chaos but a carefully arranged system of thought. To see them was to glimpse the extraordinary breadth of his mind. A man capable of capturing human emotion on canvas, predicting principles of flight, engineering complex mechanisms, and observing the laws of nature with unparalleled precision. And yet, beneath the brilliance, there is a shadow. These machines could empower, They could elevate humanity, but they could also destroy. Leonardo's genius was inseparable from ambiguity. Each sketch contains both hope and warning, insight and peril. He understood that creation and destruction are entwined, that knowledge itself carries moral weight, and that the act of invention is inseparable from ethical responsibility. In the end, the machines Leonardo envisioned are more than mechanical constructs. They are a reflection of his mind. They embody curiosity, precision, audacity, and caution. They are expressions of a man who saw the universe as a system to be understood, explored, and respected. The workshop is both laboratory and cathedral, a space where the secrets of nature, the mechanics of life, and the possibilities of human ingenuity converge in silent, mechanical symphony. Leonardo da Vinci leaned over the dissection table, candlelight flickering across the pale, taut skin of the cadaver before him. The smell of formaldehyde and decay mixed with the iron tang of blood. Yet he inhaled it all with a scholar's focus, not a novice's revulsion. To others, this would have been horrifying, grotesque. To Leonardo, it was revelation. Every muscle, tendon, and ligament revealed the hidden mechanics of life, a secret language written in flesh and bone that he was determined to decipher. He had begun these studies in secret, often under the cover of night. Dissection was forbidden, considered sacrilege by church authorities, yet Leonardo was undeterred. He believed that understanding the human body was a form of devotion, a path to comprehending the divine order of creation. Flesh was not merely matter. It was structure, movement, and purpose intertwined, a map of the soul's vessel. Each layer he peeled back brought new insight. The superficial muscles of the arm twisted into deeper networks of sinew and nerve, each with a specific function, each interdependent. He sketched relentlessly, the pages of his notebooks filling with intricate diagrams, annotated with mirrored script that would confound any casual reader. These drawings were more than anatomical studies. They were a codex of life, a blueprint of motion, a celebration of human engineering in its purest form. Leonardo's curiosity extended to the minutiae. He examined the heart with particular fascination, observing the valves and chambers with precision unmatched in his era. He noted the directional flow of blood, the contraction of the ventricles, and theorized on the mechanics that would not be empirically confirmed for centuries. In each observation, he saw the perfect fusion of function and design, a machine both elegant and efficient, divine in its complexity. But Leonardo did not merely study mechanics. He studied expression. The musculature of the face, the tension in the jaw, the flex of the eyes and lips, all were indicators of thought, emotion, and intention. He believed that understanding the human body was inseparable from understanding human nature. Expression, he concluded, arises from the intersection of physiology and psychology, and to capture one without the other was to miss the essence of life itself. The notebooks reveal experiments on proportion, symmetry, and the mathematics of the body. He mapped limbs, traced the arc of the spine, and calculated ratios between bone lengths to divine the principles of balance and movement. Leonardo was convinced that these patterns mirrored universal laws, that the human body reflected the geometry of the cosmos, the hidden order of creation writ in flesh. Every dissection, every sketch, every note was a step closer to this profound realization. His study of the skeleton was particularly meticulous. He observed how the pelvis supports the torso, how the joints articulate to produce fluid motion, how the ribcage shields yet permits expansion for breath. Each bone was a lever, each muscle a spring, each tendon a cable, a living mechanism of astonishing sophistication. To witness and record these mechanisms was, for Leonardo, both scientific endeavor and spiritual meditation. Yet there was a darker dimension to these studies. In dissecting the dead, Leonardo confronted mortality constantly. Flesh decayed, organs deteriorated, bones crumbled. Impermanence was undeniable. And in this confrontation, he gleaned philosophical truths. Life is transient, beauty is fleeting, yet patterns endure. His sketches often juxtapose the perfect structure of the body with the inevitability of decay, a meditation on the fragility and resilience of life. He extended his anatomical studies to the movement of the living. Leonardo observed how people walk, how children crawl, how athletes exert force. He connected these observations with his dissections, theorizing how muscle, bone, and tendon worked in concert to produce motion. He sketched these motions in multiple stages, capturing not a single frozen instant but sequences, anticipating principles of biomechanics centuries before formal study emerged. Leonardo's fascination with anatomy was also intertwined with art. Every figure he painted, Madonna, Christ, angel, was informed by his studies. He understood how muscles flex when reaching, how skin stretches, how bones shift beneath tissue. This knowledge gave his work an unparalleled lifelike quality, an internal logic that made every posture, gesture, and expression believable. His art became a laboratory for anatomical truth, and his dissections a preparation for artistic mastery. The study of internal organs was equally revolutionary. Leonardo examined the brain, noting the convolutions of the cortex, the cavities, and the network of vessels. He speculated on its function, linking physical structure with mental capability, a precursor to neuroanatomy. The eyes were a particular focus. He dissected them meticulously, tracing the path of light, the curvature of the lens, and the connection to the optic nerve. For Leonardo, sight was both literal and metaphorical. Perception itself was a window into understanding. Despite the rigor, Leonardo's work retained a poetic dimension. His sketches are precise, yet they radiate a deep reverence for life. Veins are traced not merely for utility but for elegance. Bones are rendered with an almost sculptural grace. Observation is intertwined with awe, calculation with devotion, science with artistry. Anatomy, in his hands, becomes a form of meditation, a way to reconcile human curiosity with reverence for the divine. He also contemplated the implications of his discoveries. Knowledge of the body could heal, could illuminate, could transform, but it could also frighten, disturb, or be misapplied. He often coded his notes, left sketches incomplete, and concealed insights behind mirrored writing. Leonardo understood the power of knowledge and the responsibility inherent in possessing it. To dissect, to measure, to observe was to wield authority over the most intimate truths of existence. This obsession consumed him. Days and nights blurred. Apprentices came and went, often unnerved by the smells, the intensity, and the obsession that seemed to radiate from their master. Leonardo would scarcely sleep, eat mechanically, and yet, in his relentless focus, he achieved insights decades ahead of his contemporaries. Each dissection, each sketch, each reflection brought him closer to a comprehensive understanding of human life, a fusion of science, philosophy, and art. Leonardo's anatomical work also revealed his profound empathy. He did not merely study the body as a mechanism. He sought to understand the human experience embodied in flesh. The tension of muscles, the alignment of bones, the gestures of hands, all were clues to intention, emotion, and cognition. In studying death, he illuminated life. In mapping structure, he revealed spirit. By the end of his life, Leonardo had transformed anatomy into a science of observation, prediction, and ethical contemplation. He had constructed a visual and intellectual compendium of the human body that remained unmatched for centuries. His notebooks, filled with mirrored script, diagrams, and reflections, are evidence of a mind that bridged worlds, science and art, the physical and the metaphysical, the mortal and the eternal. And yet, despite all his knowledge, Leonardo remained in awe. Every body dissected, every organ examined, every sketch made was a reminder of the mystery that still eluded him. Life, in all its complexity, was both knowable and unknowable. Mortality loomed, imperfection persisted, but within these limitations, Leonardo glimpsed the elegance of creation, a truth that would inform not only his art and science, but his very understanding of humanity itself. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks are among the most enigmatic and tantalizing relics of the Renaissance. Thousands of pages, densely packed with sketches, diagrams, mirrored writing, and cryptic notes, form a sprawling testament to a mind that refused limits. These codices are not mere journals. They are laboratories of thought, repositories of secrets, and maps to the hidden workings of the universe. To open one is to step into the labyrinth of Leonardo's intellect, where art, science, anatomy, engineering, and philosophy converge in a dizzying mosaic. The notebooks were written in a form of mirror script, flowing from right to left, legible only when reflected in a mirror. Scholars have debated why Leonardo adopted this method. Some suggest it was a practical choice. He was left-handed, and writing in reverse prevented smudging the ink. But others argue that there was intention beyond convenience. Secrecy. The mirrored writing concealed ideas, forcing the reader to engage actively, to decode, to prove themselves worthy of insight. Within this secrecy lies a reflection of Leonardo himself, a mind wary of revelation, yet desperate to preserve knowledge. The content of the codices spans every conceivable topic. Anatomical diagrams show muscles, bones, and organs with painstaking accuracy. Engineering sketches depict flying machines, water-lifting devices, and mechanical automata. Observations of rivers, winds, and waves reveal an unparalleled understanding of natural forces. Even philosophical musings, reflections on morality, perception, and the human condition are interwoven throughout the pages. The codices are encyclopedic, yet their organization is idiosyncratic, a reflection of a mind that leapt between disciplines, seeing connections invisible to others. One of the most intriguing aspects of the codices is the layering of knowledge. Diagrams are often overlaid with notes, sketches of unrelated inventions, or reflections on entirely different subjects. A single page may contain the structure of a human hand, the design of a bridge, and a meditation on flight. This layering creates a sense of depth and complexity, as if Leonardo intended the reader to navigate multiple levels of understanding simultaneously. Knowledge, in his view, was never linear. It was multidimensional, interconnected, and alive. Some codices suggest that Leonardo viewed knowledge as inherently dangerous. His designs for war machines, for example, are interspersed with warnings and theoretical constraints. He understood that technology could be used to create or destroy, and that insight, if misapplied, could have consequences beyond comprehension. There is a moral undertone throughout the codices. Knowledge is not neutral, and understanding must be tempered with ethical responsibility. The very act of writing in secrecy reflects his awareness of the power contained within his discoveries. The anatomical sections of the codices are particularly striking. Leonardo dissected hundreds of bodies in secret, documenting his findings in meticulous detail. He labeled organs, traced blood vessels, and mapped skeletal structures with an accuracy that would not be surpassed for centuries. His observations extended beyond mere description. He theorized on function, motion, and interdependence, creating a synthesis of biology, mechanics, and philosophy. The human body, in his eyes, was both machine and mystery, a microcosm of universal order. In the engineering sections, Leonardo's imagination is boundless. He sketches gears, pulleys, levers, and complex machinery, often annotating them with notes on force, weight, and motion. Some devices were whimsical mechanical lions, self-propelled carts, automata designed to amuse or demonstrate principles. Others were ambitious and potentially destructive, armored vehicles, catapults, and weapons of war. Each invention is rooted in observation and experimentation. Even the most fanciful designs reflect rigorous calculation. Leonardo's codices show that he treated the world as a system of interlocking mechanics, governed by principles waiting to be understood and harnessed. The codices also reveal Leonardo's obsession with flight. He studied birds incessantly, observing wing shapes, angles of lift, and patterns of movement. His sketches include ornithopters, aerial screws, and gliding devices. He calculated proportions, weight distribution, and the physics of motion with astonishing foresight. Though few of these machines were ever built, the underlying principles anticipate modern aeronautics. In these pages, Leonardo is not merely an artist or inventor. He is a proto-scientist, theorizing centuries before his concepts could be realized. There is an almost mystical quality to the codices. Leonardo frequently interspersed his empirical observations with philosophical reflections on nature and the cosmos. He saw patterns everywhere. In the flow of water, the branching of trees, the spirals of shells, and the curvature of rivers. These patterns suggested an underlying order, a hidden geometry that connects all phenomena. The codices, therefore, are not just scientific journals. They are a quest to decode the architecture of reality itself. Some pages hint at coded messages, symbols, and cryptic notation whose full meaning remains unknown. Scholars have speculated about hidden references to mathematics, theology, or esoteric knowledge. Leonardo's fascination with secrecy is evident. Knowledge is power, and power must be carefully guarded. The codices function as both a repository and a lockbox, containing insights that are accessible only to those willing to look deeply, question assumptions, and engage with the mind behind the page. The organization of the codices is revealing in itself. There is no linear narrative, no chronological progression. Ideas leap, repeat, and evolve across pages, reflecting the non-linear thought process of a polymath whose curiosity defies categorization. To read the codices is to experience Leonardo's mind in real time, iterative, recursive, and profoundly interconnected. One discovery leads to another, insights build on observation, and questions are layered upon answers yet to be fully understood. Even the physical structure of the codices reflects ingenuity. Pages are folded, layered, and annotated in ways that suggest a deliberate method for protecting and highlighting information. Margins are filled with secondary sketches. Diagrams are oriented at multiple angles. Leonardo was acutely aware of the interplay between content and form, understanding that how knowledge is presented can shape perception and comprehension. The codices are also a testament to patience and discipline. Many entries show repeated experimentation, careful refinement, and incremental observation. Leonardo's genius was not only in inspiration but in methodical, painstaking exploration. Each drawing and note is evidence of a relentless pursuit of understanding, a commitment to observe, record, and synthesize knowledge across disciplines. Through the codices, Leonardo communicates across time. The pages are at once personal journals, scientific treatises, artistic manuals, and philosophical meditations. They contain secrets that have only partially been decoded, mysteries that continue to captivate, puzzle, and inspire scholars, scientists, and artists centuries later. They embody a mind that refused boundaries, whose curiosity knew no ethical, disciplinary, or temporal limits. To engage with Leonardo's codices is to confront the depth of human potential. They reveal a man who saw the universe as a complex, interconnected system, whose pursuit of knowledge was as much ethical as intellectual. The codices are not only repositories of invention and observation. They are invitations to think, to question, to see beyond the obvious, and to recognize that the world contains layers of meaning hidden in plain sight. Even today, many secrets remain locked within these pages. Some sketches remain indecipherable. Some notes are ambiguous or incomplete. Yet this elusiveness is intentional, a reflection of Leonardo's understanding that knowledge is both gift and burden, revelation and responsibility. The codices are alive with potential, whispering to those who dare to read, challenging the mind to decode, to observe, and to understand. In this way, the codices are emblematic of Leonardo himself. Brilliant, secretive, relentless, and endlessly inquisitive. They embody the convergence of art and science, curiosity and morality, observation and imagination. They are not merely historical artifacts. They are living dialogues with one of history's most extraordinary minds, a testament to the enduring power of hidden knowledge and the human desire to uncover the unseen. Leonardo da Vinci approached art not as decoration, but as philosophy in motion. For him, painting and drawing were tools to understand the universe, to map the mechanics of life, and to reveal truths invisible to the casual observer. Every stroke carried intention. Every shadow concealed meaning. Every composition was an inquiry into human perception and the natural order. Art, in Leonardo's mind, was inseparable from thought. It was a lens through which to examine reality, morality, and the subtle interplay between appearance and truth. From his earliest works, Leonardo displayed an obsession with observation. He studied the play of light on surfaces, the curve of a smile, the tilt of a head, the flex of a wrist. He understood that human perception is influenced by subtle cues. A shadow can alter the meaning of a gesture. A glance can convey unspoken emotion. A slight distortion of proportion can create unease or intrigue. In this meticulous attention to detail, he transformed art into an instrument of discovery. The philosophy behind Leonardo's art is rooted in his belief that all forms are connected. He saw patterns in nature, spirals in shells, branching in rivers, the geometry of leaves, that mirrored structures in the human body. To paint the human form accurately was to understand the cosmos itself. His work reflects the Renaissance ideal that science and art are not separate disciplines but complementary approaches to understanding truth. The painter and the scientist, in Leonardo's view, are both observers of life, seeking knowledge through different languages. Perspective, for Leonardo, was more than a technical skill, it was a philosophical statement. The vanishing point is not merely a visual trick. It is a method to guide perception, to reveal the hierarchy of importance, to manipulate focus. In The Last Supper, the perspective lines converge on Christ, directing attention, conveying spiritual centrality, yet simultaneously creating a tension with human emotion in the surrounding figures. Through perspective, Leonardo orchestrated both reality and interpretation, illustrating his conviction that art is a tool to shape thought as much as to reflect it. Light and shadow are equally philosophical in Leonardo's work. His mastery of chiaroscuro, contrasting light and dark, was more than aesthetic. It was symbolic. Light illuminates truth. Shadow conceals doubt and mystery. In the Mona Lisa, the soft gradations of light blur the boundaries of the face, creating ambiguity in her expression. To Leonardo, uncertainty is intrinsic to life. Clarity and ambiguity coexist, and understanding emerges only through careful observation and reflection. Leonardo's art also grapples with mortality and impermanence. His anatomical studies informed not only his scientific knowledge but also his aesthetic choices. The human form, depicted with meticulous accuracy, carries both vitality and an awareness of transience. Every muscle, tendon, and sinew is alive, yet it exists within a body subject to decay. In his paintings, the beauty of life is inseparable from the shadow of death, reflecting a philosophical meditation on existence itself. Emotion is central to Leonardo's philosophy of art. He believed that the face, gesture, and posture are windows into the soul. In his studies, he observed not only how muscles move, but how they convey thought, intention, and desire. The subtle curve of a mouth, the tension in a hand, the gaze of the eyes, all are encoded signals, revealing more than words ever could. Art becomes an exploration of human consciousness, a dialogue between observer and observed, where understanding is both intellectual and emotional. The integration of science and art is apparent in his treatment of anatomy, perspective, and light. Leonardo did not separate measurement from beauty, observation from expression. His works demonstrate that precision enhances perception. The more accurate the anatomical rendering, the more convincing the emotion. The more mathematically precise the perspective, the more natural the scene appears. Philosophy, for Leonardo, is the harmonization of logic, observation, and human experience. Symbolism is another key element. Leonardo embedded layers of meaning within his compositions. A gesture, a background element, a subtle interplay of color could carry ethical, spiritual, or moral significance. The Last Supper is not only a religious depiction but a study in human psychology, moral tension, and ethical choice. Mona Lisa is not merely a portrait but an exploration of perception, secrecy, and the duality of human nature. Each painting is a meditation, a riddle, a philosophical inquiry encoded in visual form. Leonardo's philosophical approach also encompasses curiosity itself. He pursued knowledge relentlessly, believing that understanding the natural world, the human body, and the mechanisms of perception were ethical imperatives. Observation was a moral act. To see clearly was to engage responsibly with life. His art, therefore, is both epistemological and ethical, an exercise in understanding the universe while reflecting on human responsibility within it. Art, for Leonardo, is also about balance. Composition, proportion, and geometry are not mere technical concerns. They are reflections of harmony in nature and society. He studied the golden ratio, the symmetry of forms, and the rhythm of movement, embedding these principles into his works to evoke both aesthetic pleasure and cognitive resonance. Harmony in art mirrors harmony in life, a subtle philosophical assertion that beauty is not arbitrary but arises from understanding universal laws. Leonardo's approach is also introspective. His paintings, sketches, and notebooks reflect a continuous dialogue with himself, an effort to reconcile perception with reality, curiosity with ethics, and observation with imagination. He does not merely reproduce the external world. He interrogates it, transforming each depiction into a study of causality, consequence, and hidden order. The viewer, in turn, becomes a participant in this inquiry, invited to reflect, question, and perceive beyond the obvious. Even imperfections are philosophical. Leonardo often left works unfinished or allowed ambiguity to persist, understanding that certainty is a human illusion. The tension between completion and incompletion mirrors life itself. Knowledge is provisional, perception is limited, and understanding is iterative. The unfinished becomes a teaching, a meditation on the process of inquiry rather than merely the product. Ultimately, the philosophy behind Leonardo's art is a synthesis. Observation, intellect, ethics, and emotion coalesce into a unified method for understanding existence. Painting is not passive. It is active, a tool to decode the world, a method to reveal hidden structures, a dialogue between what is visible and what is concealed. Leonardo's art is simultaneously a mirror, a map, and a meditation, a philosophical exploration made manifest through pigment and brush. Through this lens, Leonardo's masterpieces are far more than visual achievements. They are ethical exercises, cognitive experiments, and meditations on the human condition. Every gesture, every line, every shadow conveys principles about perception, morality, and truth. The viewer is not merely entertained or awed but challenged, compelled to think, observe, and reflect. Art becomes an active, participatory philosophy, a call to engage with the hidden order of the universe. Leonardo's philosophy also extends to his treatment of time and impermanence. He understood that observation is fleeting, that expression changes with circumstance, and that light and shadow are transient. Capturing a moment in paint is, therefore, an attempt to freeze the ephemeral, to impose order on flux. In this, art becomes an act of both preservation and interpretation, a bridge between transient reality and enduring insight. Even today, centuries later, Leonardo's philosophical approach resonates. His insistence on careful observation, the integration of disciplines, and the ethical dimension of understanding remain instructive. His art is timeless not because it depicts historical subjects, but because it engages universal truths about perception, morality, and the pursuit of knowledge. It is a meditation on existence as relevant now as it was in Renaissance Florence. In the end, Leonardo's philosophy of art is inseparable from his genius. Every painting, sketch, and study reflects a mind that refused superficiality, that probed beneath appearances, that sought to understand both mechanics and meaning. Art is a laboratory, a mirror, a teacher, and a guide. Leonardo's work challenges us to see more clearly, to think more deeply, and to recognize that beauty is inseparable from understanding, and understanding is inseparable from life itself. Leonardo da Vinci's masterpieces are more than exercises in aesthetic brilliance. They are cryptic landscapes of hidden meaning, encoded messages waiting to be deciphered. To the casual eye, his works are beautiful, serene, and meticulously composed. But for those who look closer, who question every shadow, every gesture, every background element, there is a profound sense of secrecy, a suggestion that Leonardo was communicating on multiple levels at once. Every painting becomes a puzzle, a riddle embedded in pigment and perspective, inviting the observer to peer beneath the surface of the familiar. Take the Mona Lisa, for instance. Her enigmatic smile has been analyzed endlessly, yet it remains unresolved. Some suggest the smile conceals a psychological secret, a subtle interplay of emotion that fluctuates with the viewer's perspective. Others argue it encodes a philosophical or scientific insight, a visual cipher reflecting Leonardo's understanding of anatomy, mathematics, and human perception. The ambiguity is deliberate, a challenge to anyone who believes that reality can be fully apprehended at first glance. Her gaze follows the observer across the room, implicating the viewer in her mystery. It is as though she is both a subject and a teacher, revealing and concealing knowledge simultaneously. In The Last Supper, hidden messages operate on both visual and symbolic planes. The positioning of the apostles, their gestures, and their interactions suggest more than a simple biblical narrative. Leonardo uses geometry to organize the composition, drawing the eye to Christ while subtly encoding moral and philosophical truths about betrayal, loyalty, and human nature. Some researchers argue that the placement of hands, the tilt of heads, and even the folds of garments contain symbolic references, mathematical, theological, or ethical. Every line and shadow is deliberate. Nothing is accidental. Leonardo was creating a multilayered narrative, a story that operates in both the conscious and subconscious perception of the observer. But Leonardo's hidden messages extend beyond symbolic content. Many of his paintings include subtle references to science, anatomy, and natural laws. In the backgrounds of his portraits, winding rivers, jagged mountains, and spiraling formations may reflect patterns he observed in nature, or encode principles of geometry and proportion. Some suggest that these landscapes mirror internal states, psychological or philosophical, turning environment into extension of subject. He was embedding knowledge about the natural world, morality, and perception, all encoded within visual beauty. Some of Leonardo's hidden messages appear in anatomical precision. In Vitruvian Man, for instance, geometry and anatomy converge. The drawing is not simply a study of proportion. It is a philosophical treatise on the harmony between human beings and the cosmos. The circle and square that frame the figure suggest a hidden order, a mapping of man onto universal law. In this, Leonardo is communicating a secret truth, that observation, mathematics, and human experience are inseparable, that understanding one illuminates the other. Leonardo's use of light and shadow also carries encoded meaning. The gradations of chiaroscuro can manipulate perception, conceal flaws, or emphasize moral or psychological tension. Shadows may hide the direction of movement, create ambiguity in expression, or suggest elements that are not physically present. The interplay of illumination and darkness becomes a silent language, a code that informs mood, intention, and interpretation without a single word. In this way, every painting is both visible and invisible, a duality that mirrors Leonardo's broader obsession with the interplay of seen and unseen, known and unknown. Even mundane elements in his paintings may carry hidden significance. The positioning of hands, the curvature of fingers, or the tilt of a head might reflect knowledge of anatomy, a symbolic gesture, or a concealed philosophical argument. Leonardo understood that small details, overlooked by the untrained eye, can communicate vast layers of meaning. Nothing in his compositions is arbitrary. The visible world is a vehicle for knowledge that transcends the immediately observable. Some theories propose that Leonardo embedded numerical or mathematical codes in his works. The proportions of the Mona Lisa's face, the dimensions of architectural elements in The Last Supper, or the geometric patterns underlying other compositions may correspond to ratios and constants he discovered through observation. He was fascinated by the golden ratio, symmetry, and proportional harmony, and some scholars argue that he encoded these principles subtly to communicate ideas about beauty, balance, and universal order. Leonardo also exploited perspective as a tool for hidden messaging. By manipulating vanishing points, he could control the observer's focus, emphasize certain elements over others, and subtly encode a hierarchy of meaning. In many of his religious paintings, perspective serves both aesthetic and symbolic functions, guiding perception while embedding philosophical or theological insights. It is as if the very structure of the painting communicates, whispering truths that exist only when one engages deeply with its composition. Even the backgrounds themselves can be repositories of secrets. Twisting rivers, distant mountains, and winding paths are not merely decorative. They may reflect Leonardo's observations of nature, encode spatial mathematics, or convey allegorical meaning. The landscapes are alive with possibility, serving as mirrors of the human psyche, metaphors for moral journeys, or symbols of philosophical concepts. Each element is deliberate, layered with intent, and designed to reward the observant, patient viewer. Leonardo's hidden messages are also ethical and psychological. In The Last Supper, the varying expressions of the apostles communicate tension, doubt, and moral choice. He encodes human behavior, exploring betrayal, loyalty, courage, and fear. In doing so, he elevates narrative beyond literal depiction into a study of ethics, cognition, and perception. Art becomes a tool for understanding human psychology, a reflection of both individual and universal moral dilemmas. Even colors are chosen with meaning. Leonardo often employed subtle shifts in hue to guide perception, to evoke emotion, or to signify symbolic content. Red may suggest passion or danger. Blue may convey serenity or divinity. Shadows and midtones modulate interpretation, creating layers of ambiguity that encourage contemplation. The codified use of color transforms painting into a semiotic language, a system of communication where observation, knowledge, and interpretation converge. Some hidden messages are so subtle that they escape detection for centuries. Infrared scans, pigment analysis, and careful restoration have revealed underdrawings, alterations, and concealed forms that suggest Leonardo was continuously refining and re-encoding meaning. His creative process was iterative, experimental, and deeply philosophical. Each adjustment may represent a deliberate effort to convey a truth accessible only to those who can perceive nuance. Ultimately, the hidden messages in Leonardo's masterpieces are a reflection of his mind. Brilliant, secretive, inquisitive, and relentless. They combine science, art, philosophy, and psychology into a single medium. Every brushstroke, shadow, gesture, and line of perspective is a letter in a complex, multidimensional language that spans centuries. The paintings are not only visual objects but intellectual instruments, inviting viewers to decode, reflect, and participate in the pursuit of hidden truths. Engaging with Leonardo's hidden messages is a challenge, but it is also an invitation. They reward observation, patience, and curiosity, offering layers of insight that extend beyond the surface of the canvas. They reveal a man who understood that the visible world is a gateway to the invisible, that perception is both fragile and revealing, and that art can serve as both mirror and key to deeper knowledge. Through this intricate coding, Leonardo communicates across time. The observer of today becomes a participant in a centuries-old dialogue, deciphering intentions, uncovering secrets, and glimpsing the mind of a genius who understood the interplay of visibility, perception, and truth. The masterpieces are living texts, continually offering new discoveries, new enigmas, and new reflections on human nature, morality, and the cosmos. In the end, the hidden messages in Leonardo's art embody the paradox that defines him. A man who reveals endlessly, yet conceals equally, who invites engagement, yet guards understanding, who illuminates the world, yet insists on mystery. His works are not merely masterpieces. They are puzzles, philosophical treatises, ethical meditations, and coded messages. A testament to the extraordinary depth of a mind that continues to intrigue, challenge, and inspire. Leonardo da Vinci lived in a world that was both illuminated by Renaissance reason and shadowed by mysticism, superstition, and secret knowledge. The air of Florence, Milan, and other Italian courts was thick with alchemical speculation, hermetic philosophy, and esoteric traditions that intertwined religion, mathematics, and natural observation. Leonardo, ever curious and endlessly observant, did not dismiss these currents of thought. Instead, he absorbed, tested, and transformed them, blending mysticism with science in a way that made his work both rational and mysteriously profound. From a young age, Leonardo was fascinated by the unseen. He believed that the universe contained hidden forces, patterns, and correspondences that could be perceived through careful observation. The Hermetic principle that, as above, so below, resonated deeply with him. The microcosm of the human body mirrored the macrocosm of the universe, and the laws governing one could illuminate the other. This idea is woven throughout his anatomical sketches, engineering designs, and artistic compositions, suggesting that he saw no sharp boundary between science, philosophy, and mysticism. Alchemy, too, influenced his thinking. Though Leonardo never practiced alchemy in the sense of transforming metals into gold, he was intrigued by the symbolic and practical aspects of the discipline. The processes of dissolution, transformation, and recombination mirrored his approach to understanding the natural world. Water flowing through a river, air swirling in vortices, or the mechanics of a wing could all be read as both empirical observation and symbolic metaphor. Transformation, in Leonardo's mind, was universal. Matter, energy, life, and perception were all part of a continuous process of change that could be studied, understood, and represented. His notebooks hint at mystical numerology and the use of sacred geometry. Spirals, circles, and proportions appear repeatedly in sketches, suggesting that Leonardo saw the natural world as a system governed by divine mathematics. He studied the Vitruvian principles of proportion not only to perfect the human figure but to reveal a universal order that connected architecture, anatomy, and the cosmos. Numbers were not merely tools. They were keys, unlocking hidden harmonies and revealing the subtle architecture of existence. There is also evidence that Leonardo was influenced by secretive esoteric groups, though historical documentation is scarce and often speculative. Some scholars suggest that he had access to circles interested in the Kabbalah, Hermetic texts, and early mystical societies that explored the intersection of spirit, matter, and human potential. These ideas are reflected in the layered symbolism of his paintings, the hidden codes in his notebooks, and his fascination with dualities. Visible and invisible, material and spiritual, life and death. The concept of duality permeates his work. Leonardo constantly explored the tension between opposites. Light and shadow, motion and stillness, life and decay. He observed that nature exists in a delicate balance, where forces interact invisibly to produce observable phenomena. His fascination with vortices, whirlpools, and spiral formations is both scientific and mystical. They are patterns of energy, evidence of underlying laws, and metaphors for cycles of creation and destruction. By encoding this duality in art and design, Leonardo blurred the line between empirical observation and esoteric insight. Mysticism also informs his treatment of human emotion. Leonardo understood that expression is not purely physical. It is a reflection of the soul, the unseen mind, and hidden intention. In his portraits, gestures, and narrative compositions, emotion is layered, ambiguous, and coded. Faces conceal and reveal simultaneously, reflecting a belief that human experience is multidimensional, complex, and governed by forces beyond immediate perception. His attention to subtle shifts in posture, gaze, and expression transforms the observer into an active participant in decoding hidden truths. Leonardo's esoteric influences extend to his treatment of nature. He saw natural phenomena as reflections of divine order, a philosophy that merges empirical observation with spiritual insight. Mountains, rivers, and clouds are not merely landscapes. They are symbols of universal laws, patterns of energy, and visual metaphors for hidden principles. Water, for example, is depicted with extraordinary precision, yet it also carries symbolic weight, representing transformation, continuity, and the cyclical nature of existence. Even his machines and inventions carry mystical undertones. Flying devices, mechanical arms, and self-propelled carts are not just engineering marvels. They embody the potential to transcend natural limits. By imagining the impossible, Leonardo explored the human capacity to extend perception, manipulate forces, and engage with the universe in ways that approach the divine. There is a spiritual dimension to his mechanical genius. Invention becomes a form of exploration, a way to bridge the human and the cosmic, the known and the mysterious. Some of Leonardo's cryptic notes suggest meditation on alchemical symbolism. The interplay of elements, air, water, fire, and earth, appears in sketches of machinery, anatomy, and natural phenomena. These studies are not purely symbolic. They are empirical investigations infused with an awareness that natural forces operate according to hidden principles. The boundaries between science and esoterica dissolve in his work, revealing a mind that treats both observation and speculation as essential tools for comprehension. Leonardo's interest in optics and light also reflects esoteric influence. He studied the behavior of light with scientific rigor, mapping reflections, refractions, and diffusion. But light, for Leonardo, was more than a physical phenomenon. It was metaphor, revelation, and illumination. Shadows conceal truth, and illumination reveals it. An idea rooted in mystical thought that knowledge, like light, must be guided, focused, and interpreted. His paintings exploit this duality, creating layers of visible and invisible meaning that challenge perception. There is also an ethical dimension to Leonardo's esoteric engagement. He seems aware that knowledge, whether scientific, artistic, or mystical, carries responsibility. Secrets, power, and insight must be handled with care. They are gifts that can enlighten or destroy. This understanding may explain why so many of his notebooks are encoded, why so many ideas were left incomplete, and why his art and inventions contain deliberate ambiguity. Knowledge is not neutral, it is moral, and mastery requires discernment. Even today, scholars continue to debate the full extent of Leonardo's esoteric influence. Some claim that his works contain hidden references to mystical orders, ancient philosophical texts, or secret rituals. Others argue that his engagement was primarily intellectual and observational, using mystical concepts as metaphors rather than dogma. Regardless, the impact is undeniable. Leonardo's blending of rational investigation and esoteric inquiry created a body of work that is both scientifically rigorous and spiritually profound, a fusion that continues to captivate minds centuries later. Leonardo's life itself reflects the tension between visible accomplishment and hidden insight. He was a public genius, admired by patrons, feared for his ingenuity, and celebrated for his art. Yet much of his most radical work, dissections, mechanical designs, coded notes, was conducted in private, shielded from public scrutiny. In this duality, Leonardo embodies the esoteric principle that knowledge often exists in layers, revealed only to those capable of perception, patient inquiry, and ethical judgment. Ultimately, the influence of mysticism and esoterica on Leonardo da Vinci is inseparable from his genius. His art, science, anatomy, and engineering are all infused with a sense of hidden order, underlying energy, and layered meaning. He saw the universe as a complex, interconnected system, where observation, speculation, and intuition converge to reveal truths that are both practical and transcendent. In every brushstroke, sketch, and calculation, there is the whisper of secrets, the echo of mysteries, and the profound acknowledgement that reality contains dimensions beyond immediate perception. Through this lens, Leonardo's life and work emerge as a continuous dialogue between the seen and the unseen, the rational and the mystical, the human and the divine. He challenges us to look closer, to question, to decode, and to understand that the world is far more intricate and mysterious than it appears. Mysticism is not a distraction in his work. It is an essential layer, a tool for insight, a framework through which empirical observation gains ethical and philosophical depth. In the end, Leonardo da Vinci's genius is inseparable from his engagement with the mystical and esoteric. Science and observation are inseparable from philosophy and symbol. Art and invention are inseparable from secrecy and contemplation. He is a man who mapped the visible and invisible worlds simultaneously, leaving a legacy that is both intellectual and spiritual, rational and enigmatic. A reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is as much about wonder, ethics, and insight as it is about discovery. Leonardo da Vinci navigated a world where genius alone was rarely enough. Talent had to contend with politics, power, and patronage. The Renaissance courts of Italy, Florence, Milan, Venice, and Rome were arenas of ambition, wealth, and intrigue. Artists were not merely creators. They were courtiers, advisors, and sometimes pawns in the complex chessboard of political influence. For Leonardo, patronage was both a necessity and a stage. To secure resources for his work, he had to charm, negotiate, and sometimes manipulate the powerful, all while protecting the secrecy and integrity of his vision. In Florence, Leonardo was born into a city bursting with culture, commerce, and competition. Wealthy families, particularly the Medici, controlled the flow of commissions and shaped artistic trends. To earn favor, artists had to demonstrate skill, innovation, and loyalty. Leonardo's early promise as a painter and draftsman caught the attention of patrons who recognized both his talent and his potential to enhance prestige. Every commission was an opportunity to secure resources, assert influence, and extend his creative freedom. But it was also a test of diplomacy, patience, and subtlety. Milan, however, was where Leonardo's genius and political acumen truly intertwined. Under the rule of Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan, Leonardo was offered not only artistic commissions but also engineering projects, military inventions, and urban planning tasks. His role in the court was multifaceted: painter, architect, engineer, and military advisor. Ludovico recognized that commissioning Leonardo brought both tangible and symbolic power. A painting, a sculpture, or an innovative machine elevated the prestige of the patron while demonstrating that they were aligned with progress, intellect, and cultural sophistication. Leonardo thrived in this environment, but he also understood its perils. Patrons could be capricious, envious, or impatient. Projects were often delayed, funds withheld, or political crises could make commissions impossible to complete. He learned to navigate these challenges with strategy, offering sketches, models, and proposals that showcased ingenuity without fully revealing the secrets of his most ambitious inventions. Leonardo's notebooks, full of coded notes and mirrored writing, reflect his awareness that knowledge in the wrong hands, or exposed too early, could be dangerous both to him and to those who supported him. Military commissions, in particular, required discretion. Leonardo designed cannons, armored vehicles, bridges, and fortifications, all while understanding the deadly implications of his innovations. He often presented projects in theoretical form, providing insight without fully enabling destructive potential. This careful balance allowed him to maintain favor while protecting the ethical and practical consequences of his genius. Patronage was not simply a transaction. It was a negotiation of trust, secrecy, and moral responsibility. The interplay of art and politics is evident in works like The Last Supper. The commission itself was deeply tied to status. Ludovico Sforza sought to adorn the convent of Santa Maria del Grazie with a masterpiece that asserted both spiritual and worldly authority. Leonardo's genius transformed the commission into a complex tableau, encoding psychological depth, ethical dilemmas, and compositional mastery. The painting served the patron, but it also allowed Leonardo to explore themes that transcended immediate political utility: human emotion, betrayal, and the tension between destiny and free will. Leonardo's interactions with the papal court further illustrate the intersection of genius and power. In Rome, the Medici and other influential figures navigated religious, artistic, and political priorities, commissioning work that would reinforce authority, prestige, and divine favor. Leonardo was often called upon not just for art but for engineering, urban planning, and technical counsel. His ability to move between these roles made him invaluable, but also required constant vigilance. Alliances shifted, rivalries emerged, and the exposure of ideas could have serious consequences. Financial insecurity was a persistent concern. Despite his fame, Leonardo often faced delays in payment, disputes over commissions, and the precariousness of courtly favor. The artist's notebook sketches reveal not only inventions and studies, but also letters, proposals, and calculations aimed at securing contracts and managing resources. Patronage was both lifeline and labyrinth, demanding ingenuity not only in creativity but in negotiation, presentation, and timing. Leonardo's survival and productivity depended on mastering this delicate dance. Competition among artists intensified these dynamics. Leonardo was contemporaneous with Michelangelo, Raphael, and Titian, among others. Rivalries were both personal and professional, shaping commissions, reputations, and political influence. Leonardo's ability to blend innovation with diplomacy allowed him to stand out. He was not only a painter but a thinker, engineer, and advisor, offering patrons more than mere aesthetics. This versatility enhanced his leverage, but it also placed him in a world where envy, critique, and intrigue were constant. Leonardo also understood the symbolic power of presentation. A sketch, a model, or a prototype was not only a tool for design but a demonstration of capability and vision. Patrons were impressed not just by finished work but by the ingenuity and foresight revealed in preliminary studies. By revealing some secrets while withholding others, Leonardo created a mystique that reinforced both his genius and the perceived value of his work. This calculated control over information mirrors the esoteric caution he exercised in his notebooks. Knowledge is power, and its revelation must be managed carefully. The ethical dimension of patronage also loomed large. Leonardo was aware that his inventions, particularly military designs, could be exploited for harm. He navigated moral choices carefully, balancing the demands of patrons with his own conscience. While commissioned to design war engines, he often avoided full-scale construction or provided theoretical rather than practical models. His notebooks reflect this tension. A genius capable of creation and destruction, negotiating the ethical implications of power and knowledge in a world hungry for advantage. Traveling between courts was itself a political act. Moving from Florence to Milan, then to Venice, Rome, and France, Leonardo carried not only his art and inventions but also networks of influence and information. Each relocation was an opportunity to secure new patrons, avoid political instability, and extend his reach. The portability of his genius was both a blessing and a strategy. He adapted to shifting political landscapes, leveraging fame while remaining cautious of local rivalries and intrigues. Leonardo's relationship with patrons also shaped the content of his work. While he was free to explore philosophical and scientific inquiries in sketches and studies, commissioned paintings and projects often required alignment with religious, political, or social expectations. He learned to encode personal insight and innovation within the framework of patron expectations, producing works that were simultaneously utilitarian and profoundly original. The duality of service and expression became a hallmark of his genius. Even personal charisma played a role. Leonardo's charm, wit, and conversational skill were essential in cultivating patronage. Letters, recommendations, and personal interactions were as crucial as technical skill. Patrons were not merely clients. They were allies in a complex social and political ecosystem. Leonardo's ability to navigate this ecosystem without compromising his intellectual and ethical integrity was a measure of both his intelligence and his subtlety. Ultimately, Leonardo's mastery of patronage reflects a blend of genius, strategy, and ethical awareness. He understood that art, invention, and observation exist within networks of power and influence. To survive, create, and innovate, he had to negotiate not only technical and artistic challenges but also human ambition, political rivalry, and ethical dilemmas. Patronage was both the platform and the crucible in which his genius was forged. Through these relationships, Leonardo produced works that endure not only for their aesthetic or scientific brilliance, but also as monuments to strategic negotiation, intellectual autonomy, and moral reflection. His life demonstrates that genius is inseparable from context. Creation occurs in a web of influence, and survival requires mastery of both human and conceptual forces. Patronage, power, and politics were not distractions. They were integral to the realization of Leonardo da Vinci's extraordinary vision. Leonardo da Vinci's mind was a labyrinth of curiosity, observation, and reflection, a place where the boundaries between disciplines, intuition, and imagination dissolved. His genius was not merely technical or artistic, it was profoundly psychological. To understand Leonardo, one must peer into the complexity of his thought, the dualities he navigated, and the restless energy that drove him to explore every facet of the natural and human world. His psychological makeup was both a catalyst for his achievements and a source of tension, secrecy, and mystery that continues to fascinate scholars and observers centuries later. From an early age, Leonardo displayed traits that set him apart. His keen observational skills, insatiable curiosity, and ability to perceive subtle patterns in both nature and human behavior suggest a mind oriented toward deep synthesis. He combined visual acuity with analytical reasoning, connecting disparate phenomena to generate insight. This capacity for pattern recognition allowed him to move seamlessly between anatomy, engineering, art, and philosophy, as if each discipline were a facet of a single unified inquiry. Leonardo's notebooks reveal both his brilliance and his psychological intricacies. Pages are filled with obsessive studies of the human body, diagrams of machines, sketches of landscapes, and reflections on ethics and perception. The density and breadth of his work indicate a mind that rarely rested, constantly seeking to catalog, understand, and synthesize information. Yet there is also evidence of distraction, incompletion, and shifting focus, suggesting a mind that was perpetually drawn to novelty, exploration, and the pursuit of knowledge over closure. Perfectionism was a defining psychological trait. Leonardo rarely finished works to satisfaction, leaving paintings, sculptures, and studies incomplete. The Mona Lisa itself may have been in progress for decades, continually refined and reworked. This perfectionism was not mere procrastination. It reflects an awareness of the limitations of representation, a desire to capture the complexity of life and perception in a medium that can never fully encompass it. His psychological drive toward refinement illustrates a profound tension, the recognition of imperfection coupled with an unrelenting pursuit of excellence. Leonardo's psychological complexity is also apparent in his fascination with secrecy and coded writing. He frequently employed mirror script in his notebooks, encoded diagrams, and layered meaning within sketches. These behaviors suggest not only intellectual caution but also a deep understanding of cognitive boundaries. Knowledge must be interpreted carefully, and revelation can carry risk. Psychologically, this reflects both self-protection and a desire to control the interaction between observer and insight, maintaining a space where understanding unfolds gradually, and only for those who engage deeply. Socially, Leonardo was both charismatic and enigmatic. He cultivated relationships with patrons, fellow artists, and thinkers, yet maintained a private inner world that few could access. Correspondence and historical accounts depict a man capable of charm, humor, and persuasion, but also one who valued solitude, observation, and contemplation. This duality, a public persona engaged in courtly life and a private, intensely introspective inner world, is central to understanding his psychological landscape. He navigated social expectations while protecting the sanctity of his thought, a delicate balance that required acute emotional intelligence. His emotional sensitivity is evident in his art and writings. Leonardo understood that the human face and body express not only external behavior but internal states, emotion, intention, and thought. He observed micro-expressions, subtle muscle movements, and shifts in posture, encoding this understanding in both sketches and paintings. Psychologically, this reflects high empathy, an ability to perceive nuance in human behavior, and a fascination with the intersection of physiology and emotion. His works often capture moments of tension, uncertainty, and moral choice, revealing a mind attuned to the complexities of experience. Leonardo's obsessive curiosity can also be seen as a psychological imperative. He approached every subject with the same intensity, whether dissecting a cadaver, observing a river, sketching a bird in flight, or theorizing about light and optics. This relentless drive indicates a personality motivated by intrinsic exploration rather than external validation. Knowledge, for Leonardo, was both a pursuit and a necessity, a means of structuring the world and engaging with its hidden dimensions. His psyche was restless, perpetually dissatisfied with superficial explanations, demanding comprehensive, multi-layered understanding. Duality and contradiction were central themes in his thought. He embraced opposites, life and death, motion and stillness, clarity, and ambiguity. Psychologically, this reflects both tolerance for uncertainty and a recognition of complexity in human perception. Leonardo's fascination with paradox, seen in the ambiguous smile of the Mona Lisa or the interplay of light and shadow in his paintings, demonstrates a mind that understands that truth is rarely singular, that reality exists in layers, and that comprehension often requires navigating tension rather than resolving it. Leonardo's engagement with mortality profoundly shaped his psychology. Anatomical dissections, the study of decay, and reflections on life and death reveal an awareness of human fragility and impermanence. This confrontation with mortality was not morbid curiosity but an existential inquiry, a psychological exercise in understanding the conditions and limits of existence. It informed his art, his inventions, and his philosophy, providing both urgency and depth to his pursuits. Life was finite, and the pursuit of knowledge was a way to transcend that limitation. His perfectionism and obsessive focus sometimes led to isolation and anxiety. Historical accounts suggest that Leonardo struggled with periods of doubt, distraction, and internal conflict. Yet these traits also fueled his extraordinary creativity, allowing him to explore ideas others would dismiss or overlook. His psychological profile is one of tension between restlessness and discipline, innovation and meticulousness, curiosity and caution, a dynamic that drove both brilliance and enigmatic behavior. Leonardo also exhibited traits of polymathic integration. Psychologically, he was capable of holding multiple domains in his mind simultaneously, seeing connections between anatomy and architecture, light and emotion, machinery and philosophy. This cognitive flexibility allowed him to synthesize knowledge in ways few could, producing insights that transcended the limits of any single discipline. His mind functioned as a living network, with ideas constantly intersecting, cross-pollinating, and evolving. Spiritual and mystical elements of his thought further complexified his psychology. Leonardo perceived patterns and correspondences in nature, human anatomy, and cosmic order, reflecting a mind attuned to both rational observation and symbolic interpretation. He treated the visible world as a gateway to hidden truths, integrating empirical study with metaphysical reflection. This integration of science and mysticism illustrates a psychological framework capable of holding paradox, embracing uncertainty, and finding meaning in both measurable and ineffable phenomena. Ultimately, Leonardo da Vinci's psychological complexity is inseparable from his genius. Every innovation, painting, dissection, and invention is a window into a mind that combined analytical rigor with imaginative exploration, ethical reflection with empirical observation, and curiosity with caution. He was driven by a desire to understand life in all its dimensions, a drive that demanded both isolation and engagement, secrecy and revelation, discipline and unbounded exploration. Leonardo's psyche offers a lens through which we can understand the totality of his work. A man whose inner life was as intricate as his inventions, as layered as his paintings, and as dynamic as the forces of nature he studied. His mind was a crucible of observation, imagination, and ethical reflection, producing creations that continue to challenge, inspire, and mystify. In studying Leonardo's psychology, we glimpse the human dimensions behind the myth, the restlessness, the curiosity, the ethical awareness, and the extraordinary capacity for integrating knowledge and perception into a vision that transcends time. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks are among the most extraordinary and enigmatic artifacts in the history of human thought. Unlike typical journals or treatises, they are sprawling, dense, and labyrinthine, a reflection of a mind that never rested, never accepted boundaries, and pursued knowledge in every conceivable direction. Thousands of pages, written in mirrored script, filled with sketches, diagrams, and cryptic annotations, reveal not only Leonardo's genius but also his deep engagement with secrecy, observation, and the interplay between visible and hidden realities. To study these notebooks is to step into a universe where science, art, philosophy, and ethics intersect in ways that continue to baffle, inspire, and mystify. The very act of writing in mirrored script suggests an intentional layer of secrecy. While practical considerations, being left-handed, may have played a role, there is ample evidence that Leonardo was consciously encoding information. Some passages are mirrored, some layered over sketches, and some written at odd angles or in overlapping sequences, forcing the reader to engage actively, decipher, and interpret. The notebooks are not merely collections of notes. They are puzzles, keys to a mind that understood both the power and danger of knowledge. Secrets were not hidden for frivolity. They were protected, waiting for the perceptive, patient, and diligent to unlock them. The subjects Leonardo explored in his notebooks are astonishing in breadth. Anatomy dominates, with meticulously detailed drawings of muscles, bones, organs, and vascular systems. Leonardo dissected hundreds of human bodies, often in secret, carefully recording the interconnections of structures, their function, and their movement. His studies were both empirical and philosophical. He sought to understand not only how the body worked, but how form, motion, and function reflect the laws of nature. Each sketch is a combination of artistry and observation, an effort to capture the mechanics and poetry of life simultaneously. Engineering and invention occupy vast portions of the notebooks. Leonardo sketched gears, pulleys, flying machines, armored vehicles, bridges, water-lifting devices, and automata. Many designs were never realized, yet the underlying principles demonstrate a profound understanding of physics, mechanics, and innovation centuries ahead of his time. In some cases, the machines are fantastical, almost whimsical, yet they remain rooted in observation, calculation, and experimentation. The notebooks are laboratories in miniature, places where Leonardo tested ideas, refined concepts, and explored the boundaries of possibility. Observation of nature is another constant theme. Leonardo recorded patterns in water, clouds, wind, and vegetation, noting the spirals of turbulence, the branching of trees, the flow of rivers. These sketches are not mere decoration. They are systematic inquiries into natural law, capturing the movement, forces, and interactions that govern the physical world. Nature, in Leonardo's notebooks, is simultaneously studied, revered, and philosophically interpreted. Each observation becomes a piece of a vast, interconnected puzzle, linking microcosm and macrocosm, human anatomy and cosmic order. The notebooks also reveal Leonardo's fascination with optics and light. He meticulously studied reflection, refraction, the diffusion of light, and the play of shadow. His sketches demonstrate not only technical observation but also application. He used his understanding of light to enhance painting, create realistic perspectives, and manipulate perception. Light, for Leonardo, was both a tool for art and a medium of knowledge, revealing form, depth, and structure while carrying philosophical weight as a symbol of clarity and revelation. One of the most intriguing aspects of the notebooks is their organization, or apparent lack thereof. Pages jump from anatomy to engineering, from botany to philosophical musings, from military design to hydraulics. This nonlinear structure mirrors Leonardo's mind, associative, recursive, and multidimensional. He did not segregate knowledge into rigid categories. Instead, he explored interconnections, patterns, and correspondences, often overlaying sketches, notes, and ideas on the same page. To read a notebook is to experience his thought process in real time, leaping across disciplines while tracing the threads of inquiry that bind them together. Secrecy, again, is a recurring theme. Some pages contain diagrams that seem intentionally obscure, annotations that hint at principles without fully explaining them, and sketches layered with complexity to obscure their true function. Leonardo was acutely aware that knowledge, especially in the wrong hands, could be dangerous. Military inventions, anatomical insights, and mechanical designs all carried power. By encoding his ideas, he maintained control, ensured their integrity, and imposed a form of intellectual rigor. Only those willing to engage carefully, to decode and reflect, could access the full depth of his insight. Ethics and philosophy permeate the notebooks. Leonardo does not merely observe. He interprets, questions, and reflects. Notes on human behavior, motion, and anatomy are often accompanied by commentary on morality, perception, and responsibility. He understood that observation carries ethical implications, that knowledge is intertwined with consequence, and that genius without consideration could be destructive. The notebooks are, in this sense, as much about thinking as doing, as much about reflection as creation. Leonardo also encoded personal exploration and philosophical musing in subtle ways. Notes on proportion, symmetry, and the golden ratio are interwoven with sketches of inventions and anatomical studies. Reflections on mortality, the passage of time, and the nature of perception appear alongside technical calculations. Each page is layered, inviting readers to explore multiple levels of understanding: empirical, aesthetic, ethical, and mystical. In this way, the notebooks function as guides, laboratories, and philosophical treatises simultaneously. The iterative nature of his work is striking. Many sketches show repeated experimentation, adjustment, and refinement. Leonardo rarely accepted the first solution. He tested, recalculated, and revised continuously. This process-oriented approach is itself revealing psychologically. He valued exploration and understanding over immediate completion. The notebooks capture a mind in perpetual motion, where each discovery leads to new questions, each insight to further investigation. They are dynamic, alive, and unfinished, mirroring the infinite curiosity of their creator. Leonardo's annotations also suggest foresight and theoretical exploration. In sketches of flight, for example, he calculated angles, weight distribution, and forces without the benefit of modern physics. In anatomical drawings, he hypothesized physiological mechanisms that would not be empirically confirmed for centuries. The notebooks thus serve as time capsules, preserving visionary thought that often anticipates modern discovery, a testament to Leonardo's unique ability to combine observation, imagination, and intellectual rigor. Even the physicality of the notebooks is revealing. Leonardo used foldouts, layers, overlapping sketches, and marginalia in ways that suggest deliberate thought about the interaction between form and content. Pages are designed not merely to contain information but to guide perception, reveal complexity, and challenge comprehension. The notebooks are themselves instruments, teaching tools, and protective containers of knowledge, where the medium and message are inseparable. The enduring mystery of Leonardo's notebooks is part of their power. Despite centuries of study, some annotations remain undeciphered, some sketches enigmatic, and some connections elusive. The layered, nonlinear nature of the notebooks ensures that each reader experiences a unique engagement, uncovering patterns and insights in ways that reflect both the observer and the observed. They are invitations to active participation, demanding curiosity, patience, and interpretive skill. Ultimately, the notebooks are emblematic of Leonardo himself. Secretive, meticulous, restless, and visionary. They encode the convergence of art, science, philosophy, and morality, providing a rare window into a mind that saw the universe as a complex, interconnected system. To study them is to enter a dialogue with a genius across time, to glimpse the interplay of observation, speculation, and ethical reflection, and to recognize the enduring challenge of decoding hidden knowledge. Leonardo's notebooks are not merely historical artifacts. They are living documents, experiments in thought, and keys to understanding the full scope of human potential. They invite reflection, inquiry, and imagination, embodying the paradox of revelation and secrecy, of genius and humility, of knowledge as both power and responsibility. In them, Leonardo da Vinci speaks across centuries, urging us to look deeper, question assumptions, and engage with the hidden structures that shape reality. Leonardo da Vinci's scientific experiments were as secretive as they were revolutionary, often conducted in private, away from the curious eyes of patrons and rivals. While his notebooks detail extensive observations and theoretical studies, much of his hands-on experimentation remained hidden, a silent testament to his relentless pursuit of understanding. He dissected human cadavers in secrecy, probing muscles, tendons, and organs with meticulous care, seeking to understand motion, physiology, and the mechanics of life itself. These dissections were not purely anatomical. They were philosophical inquiries, reflections on mortality, the fragility of existence, and the perfection inherent in natural design. His investigations extended beyond the human body. Leonardo meticulously studied water, observing its flow, turbulence, and eddies, often sketching vortices that mirrored patterns in the human cardiovascular system. He explored air currents, bird flight, and the physics of motion, creating detailed diagrams and models that anticipated concepts of aerodynamics centuries before formal science codified them. Even plants and geology drew his attention, as he noted patterns in growth, erosion, and structural formation, revealing an insistence on uncovering underlying principles that connected all forms of life and matter. Many of Leonardo's experiments were deliberately kept obscure, encoded within his notebooks or represented in ways that only he could fully interpret. Some designs, like early prototypes of flying machines or war devices, were theoretical rather than practical, revealing principles without enabling misuse. This secrecy underscores a remarkable duality. Leonardo's work sought to reveal truth while controlling the potential consequences of that knowledge. In essence, Leonardo's secret experiments were an extension of his broader philosophy. Observation, analysis, and ethical reflection intertwined. Every experiment, every sketch, every note was part of a continuous inquiry into the mechanics, ethics, and hidden order of the world, a quiet revolution that shaped both art and science, and cemented his legacy as a thinker whose genius transcended the visible and tangible. Leonardo da Vinci's works have long been the center of controversy, not simply for their beauty but for the mysteries they contain. Scholars, historians, and enthusiasts have debated the true identities of his subjects, the hidden symbols embedded in his compositions, and even the intentions behind his most famous paintings. The Mona Lisa's smile, for instance, has sparked centuries of speculation. Does it conceal a secret message, a coded reference to a patron, or a psychological experiment on perception? Similarly, The Last Supper has been scrutinized for alleged hidden figures, symbolic gestures, and numerical codes, leading to theories that range from the plausible to the wildly speculative. Some controversies also stem from the authenticity and attribution of works. A few paintings once thought to be Leonardo's are now questioned, while new discoveries periodically reignite debates over authorship. His notebooks, filled with mirrored writing, partial sketches, and cryptic notes, further fuel speculation. Are these merely studies, or are they deliberate codes meant to conceal deeper knowledge? Beyond the scholarly disputes, these controversies capture the public imagination, transforming Leonardo's art into a nexus of intrigue where history, psychology, and mystery converge. Each debate reinforces the enduring power of his genius, reminding us that even centuries later, Leonardo's intentions remain tantalizingly elusive. Leonardo da Vinci's art has long been considered a visual code, a carefully constructed system of symbols, hidden references, and subtle cues that hint at deeper truths. Scholars, conspiracy theorists, and art historians alike have argued that his paintings contain layers of meaning beyond the immediately visible, from mathematical ratios to philosophical, religious, and even esoteric messages. The notion that Leonardo embedded hidden codes is fueled by his lifelong fascination with secrecy, pattern, and the intersection of art, science, and mysticism. The most famous example is the Mona Lisa, whose enigmatic smile has inspired centuries of speculation. Some researchers suggest that the expression shifts according to the viewer's perspective, revealing psychological subtleties or encoded emotion. Others propose that hidden numbers or letters exist within the folds of her clothing or the landscape behind her, implying connections to secret knowledge or personal symbolism. Leonardo's use of light and shadow, anatomical accuracy, and precise geometric composition all serve as potential tools for encoding meaning, suggesting that the painting operates on multiple levels simultaneously: aesthetic, scientific, and symbolic. The Last Supper is similarly enigmatic. Beyond the overt narrative, scholars have examined the arrangement of figures, gestures, and spatial composition for hidden significance. Some claim that the positions of hands and bread, the interaction of gazes, and even the angles of perspective encode theological, numerological, or mystical messages. Whether these interpretations are intended by Leonardo or the product of overanalysis remains debated, yet the very plausibility speaks to his deliberate complexity and ability to engage viewers in an intellectual game that transcends mere representation. Leonardo's notebooks support the possibility of hidden codes in his art. They contain mirrored writing, symbolic sketches, and notes that blend scientific observation with philosophical musing. This consistent pattern of embedding meaning and obscuring information suggests a mind attuned to layered communication, one that anticipated interpretation, reflection, and discovery long after his own time. The intersection of secrecy, symbolism, and technical mastery in both his notebooks and paintings provides compelling evidence that Leonardo's works were designed to convey truths in a deliberately subtle, almost cryptic fashion. Ultimately, the theories of hidden codes in Leonardo's art reflect the broader enigma of his genius. A mind that saw layers where others saw surfaces, patterns where others saw chaos, and possibilities where others saw limitation. The search for these hidden messages is less about solving a puzzle and more about engaging with the depth, subtlety, and intellectual daring of one of history's most extraordinary figures. Leonardo da Vinci's influence on modern science and art is profound and enduring. His meticulous anatomical studies laid the foundation for modern physiology, while his observations of mechanics, hydraulics, and flight anticipated principles later formalized in physics and engineering. In art, his mastery of perspective, light, and composition transformed visual storytelling, inspiring countless generations of painters and designers. Beyond technical innovation, Leonardo's interdisciplinary approach, blending observation, experimentation, and philosophical reflection, set a precedent for holistic inquiry. His work encourages the integration of science, creativity, and ethical consideration, demonstrating that discovery is most powerful when intellect and imagination converge, leaving a legacy that continues to shape both thought and practice. Leonardo da Vinci's emotional legacy is as profound and enduring as his intellectual and artistic contributions. Beyond the technical mastery and scientific insight, his work captures the depth of human experience. Curiosity, wonder, doubt, awe, and the quiet intensity of observation. Every painting, sketch, and invention resonates not only with intellect but with an acute sensitivity to the human condition, reflecting a mind deeply attuned to emotion, perception, and the fragile beauty of life. The emotional resonance of Leonardo's art lies in its subtlety. In the Mona Lisa, a slight smile conveys a universe of ambiguity, inviting viewers into a dialogue that is intimate yet mysterious. In The Last Supper, gestures, expressions, and spatial arrangement dramatize betrayal, devotion, and moral tension, engaging the observer in psychological reflection. Leonardo's work captures fleeting moments, internal struggles, and the quiet intricacies of human behavior, bridging centuries to speak directly to our shared humanity. His scientific studies also carry an emotional weight. Dissections, anatomical sketches, and mechanical designs are imbued with reverence for life and curiosity about its mechanisms. Leonardo approached the natural world with awe, treating each observation as both discovery and meditation. Even his more technical inventions reflect an emotional engagement. The dream of human flight, the fascination with water, and the interplay of forces in motion reveal a mind inspired not solely by utility, but by wonder and possibility. Leonardo's legacy evokes reflection, inspiring generations to pursue knowledge, creativity, and ethical consideration simultaneously. His life demonstrates that genius is not merely a function of intellect, but of emotional depth, empathy, and an enduring curiosity about the human and natural world. The emotional impact of his work lies in its timeless ability to move, challenge, and connect us to the mind of one of history's most extraordinary figures. Ultimately, Leonardo da Vinci leaves us not only a record of innovation and artistry, but a testament to the human spirit, a legacy of wonder, moral reflection, and the profound emotional resonance of observation, imagination, and discovery.